It's Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B. Now on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2, and streaming live at ArizonaSports.com. The guys are powered by the law offices of Lerner and Rowe. In a wreck and need a check? Make one call, that's all. 602-977-1900. And now on your ESPN station in Phoenix, ESPN 620, Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B.
Well, Zion Williamson has his first career triple-double as he leads the Pelicans to a 124-116 victory over the Suns. They'll do it all over again tonight. And the Arizona travels to number 9, Iowa State. Arizona State heads to Utah. And the D-backs, Brandon Pfaadt, is successful in his spring training debut. Welcome in, Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B. Jackson, Connor, myself, Dan Manucci out here at Wright Toyota. Roc will join us in just a few minutes. Jack, y'all good to go? Talking about the Combine, talking about the Suns. Connor back there at the controls. You feeling good this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. You know, it's been 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks, I believe, on Sunday since the Super Bowl, and the NFL continues to buzz. I tell people all the time, it's the greatest reality TV show in the world, except it's actually real life. We're talking, you know, the news about Matthew Stafford. We were talking about the Combine earlier, and I know Roc and others don't like the Combine. Us football junkies enjoy it. You know, we miss football, but no, I'm excited to dive into that with all we have today.
We are out here at Wright Toyota, right on the Price, right on the corner, 78th Street and Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard. They got some outstanding certified pre-owned vehicles. Jack's your old stomping grounds over there at the Waste Management Open. It's coming down. 16's coming down slowly but surely over there.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how fast that all turns around. We just mentioned the Super Bowl and, you know, the Waste Management. We talked about Jake Knapp locally. Yeah, it's crazy. Everything's starting to cool down here in Arizona, and the heat's starting to come up.
For those that don't know the Jake Knapp story, just real quick, he shoots a 59 yesterday. I haven't checked today. I'm sure he'll be going off this afternoon. He's a local guy. He's been fighting on the Corn Ferry tour. He's just been battling for many, many years.
Yeah, he's from California originally. He lives in Scottsdale now. Most PGA Tour golfers, they'll either pick Scottsdale, you know, some go to Florida, maybe even Texas to kind of live at where it's, you know, sunny, a lot of heat year-round where they can golf. Jake Knapp, 28, 29 years old, kind of battled back and forth, being in the Corn Ferry Tour, getting out of it, being in the Corn Ferry Tour, getting out of it. He was a nightclub bouncer for a while and then found his way, had a, you know, golf's one of those things that it's all about momentum and spark. Found his way into the PGA Tour, had a good rookie season, and shot a 59 yesterday. Real intrigued to see how he does today. He's tied for the lead currently, hasn't teed off yet. So a local guy, lives here locally in Scottsdale. If you look up Jake Knapp with a K, it's a fascinating story.
That's good to hear that the good guys are breaking through on the tour. Hey, perseverance and patience pays off, doesn't it? Well, the Phoenix Suns, folks, they went cold in the fourth quarter. They shot 9 of 25 from the field. If I do the K-State math, Jack, that's 36%, and just 2 of 14 from three-point range. Plus, they had 6 turnovers in that fourth quarter. They have now lost 7 of their last 8 and 11 of the last 14. Let that marinate a little bit there, folks. They've lost 11 of the last 14 games. Again, giving up on average 123 points per game in these last 14 games. They now sit 3.5 games behind Sacramento for the last play-in spot. Bradley Beal was out with the calf. As I mentioned, they gave up 16 offensive rebounds. The 16 turnovers, 6 crucial in that fourth quarter. Booker had 4 of them in that fourth quarter, and the Pelicans again tonight, 7 o'clock. Jax, you watch this game, you're going, okay, going back and forth. The Pelicans are giving them a good game. The Suns will close this out. Turnover, offensive rebound, tip in there at the end of the third quarter. You felt like the momentum might have switched that way toward this Pelicans team. But then there's the big fella. I mean, there he is, Zion Williamson. Might have the best game I've ever seen in the NBA. And why wouldn't it be against the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, exactly. The timing of that. I was going to say the exact same thing. 24-year-old, a guy that's been criticized of his weight. He's the lightest he's been. He looked great last night. And, of course, his first career triple-double goes against the Phoenix Suns. It's just frustrating. You know, you're a Suns fan. I'm a Suns fan.
Since forever.
Haven't watched much of this team just because it's been so frustrating. And, you know, you go to the head coach, Mike Budenholzer, but you also tell yourself, do they want to fire him and have another head coach? 3 head coaches in 3 years. Will be the 4th this year. And then you see across the pond in Detroit, a guy named Monty Williams that you kicked out of here, and what he's been able to do there in Detroit. It's frustrating. I know we got sound of a report today with Budenholzer and Booker But it's just puzzling. It's the same stuff we talk about every single show, and it's another loss for the Phoenix Suns.
Let's talk about that sound, Connor. The senior NBA insider Chris Haynes said that Devin Booker and Mike Budenholzer had a meeting, and basically for D-Book to somewhat tone her down. Here's that sound.
I was told that weeks ago, Mike Budenholzer called his star guard Devin Booker into his office to issue a complaint. That complaint, I'm told, was that Booker was being too vocal on the court and during timeout huddles. He implored his star guard to tone it down to allow for the coach's voice to be heard. This completely shocked Booker, I was told.
Could you imagine, and this is all alleged, but I got to feel like Chris Haynes, who's pretty solid NBA insider, has a lot of truthism. So if his sources are saying that, could you imagine if Mike Budenholzer said that to Chris Paul a few years ago, CP3, in a meeting, and what CP3 might have said? Now, we don't know how Devin Booker came back on that, but if you heard, we'll get some sound from Devin Booker talking last night, how he's talking about, guys he's speaking up. Seems like at least he's speaking up now, trying to get his point across, and they're talking about communication and lack of communication. As a matter of fact, one of the sound bites, he said, hey, look, it seems though when things get tough, we go quiet. He says if guys would communicate and talk like we did in the practices, like we did before the game, then we might win some of these games. Now, if this is where we're seeing Booker has been stepping up, because a lot of us has been talking about, hey, where's the leadership in Devin Booker? Where's the leadership in KD? If he's been trying to step up, and now allegedly Mike Budenholzer say, hey, look, tone it down. I got to be able to get my points across in the huddle. I'm sure he gets that, but some of the things he says in that huddle might be more important than the next play that Mike Budenholzer wants to run.
I think Budenholzer just lost the locker room. I mean, he even goes back to the whole thing with Nurkic. We don't know the inside of that, but maybe some players were rubbed the wrong way on how he treated Yusuf Nurkic. It's chaos. I kind of take my biggest takeaway from that is I'm glad that Booker's talking, that he has a voice, that he is vocal. But at the end of the day, for Budenholzer, I get his side of things where he says, you know what, Booker, settle down a little bit. I'm the head coach. Let me take care of this. But on the flip side, it's cool to see a guy like Devin Booker in a chaotic situation give more of a voice. It's just another tale to how much of a disappointment it is for the Phoenix Suns this season, and it's more chaotic by the day.
Speaking of that, let's go to the next sack. Connor, if you've got that ready, Devin Booker, he talked about how things should have been handled differently, maybe being a leader a little bit sooner. Here's that soundbite from last night.
When you're talking about drawing the line and should have been done a long time ago, is that something that you're sitting here now thinking about yourself and like, I should have handled things differently, I should have done something?
Yeah, I always look at myself first. But I also talk a lot.
He also talks a lot, which is, I don't know if that's a shot at Mike Budenholzer. Say, look, I talk a lot. I'm going to talk a lot. Nobody's going to stop me. Hallelujah that if he is talking a lot. But here's the thing, Jax. Why not have spoken up sooner? He may have. He may have spoken up a lot sooner. But whatever is being said or not said is not working for this Phoenix Suns team. And like yourself, myself, true Suns fans or Suns fans in general are just miffed for this New Orleans Pelicans team to come in here. They've now won 3 in a row. They got them again tonight at 7 o'clock over at the Phoenix Arena. And to allow them at one time, they were up by 16 points at being the Pelicans. Now, the Suns got back in it at halftime. Matter of fact, it was either tied up or they had the lead. But, so those are some of the things you got to take a look at. Here's Booker talking about communication problems from the top to bottom.
Everybody has to be on the same page. You can starts with the leaders of the team, obviously me, Brad, and Kay, and coach. But from my history, there's 15, 20 guys on the sideline that know the game plan, that know what's going on, and in the huddles, just constant communication.
So if Mike Budenholzer is telling him to pipe it down during the timeouts, what I heard there is Devin Booker said, look, we've got 14, 15 guys that know the game of the NBA. We know what to do, how to do. Now, if he's usurping his authority and saying some things that Budenholzer wants to be done, that's one thing. I can see them getting that,
2 more minutes,
typing that down and say, hey, look, hey, Book, let me get my point across, and then you can say something. So we don't know the tenor of that meeting, that alleged meeting that Chris Haynes of NBA Insider was reporting, right? So it could be a combination of all the above. But Book sounded pretty adamant, like, look, we've got dudes who know the game. Let us communicate with each other. You can set the play up, do what we want, but let's make this a total communicative huddle if that's what this is all getting.
But if I'm Budenholzer, I'm clacking my rings on my desk that I've won with Popovich and with the Bucks and saying, look, buddy, I know what I'm talking about a little bit. Just thinking about
and he does.
And he does.
Yeah.
He does. I mean, yes, Booker, Durant, all their success, great. But at the end of the day, you brought in a championship coach to bring in a championship culture, and it's just not buying in. I just thought about this. You ever wonder what would have happened with Kevin Young? You remember Kevin Young, the Suns assistant? Now he's doing a tremendous job over there at BYU. He had a good relationship with Devin Booker and some of the players on the team. I always wonder, what if a guy like him, a younger guy, to step in a role, what you're seeing with J.J. Redick and the relatability, what he's doing with the Lakers, and obviously they got LeBron and Luka. But you always wonder, what if Kevin Young steps in this role, what would happen?
The thing that struck me in that soundbite by Chris Haynes was, who's complaining? He said, Mike Budenholzer said there's complaints about the communication or talking in the huddle, or you're talking too much, which he might have a lot of chatter. And Mike might have said, look, just tone it down a little bit so I can get the play out. Well, whatever that is. But who's complaining? I mean, I commend Devin Booker for stepping up and being the leader. Now, I know what head coaches are saying. Look, there's got to be a happy medium. Allow me to calm everybody down. You tone it down while I give the play. And then what CP3 used to do when he was here, he'd go to individual guys. He'd go to DA, or he'd go over here to the Twins. And he would do it kind of separate from the huddle. So maybe it's a huddle thing. But, hey, I commend Buck to want to chime in at any particular time. And I think that's just my feeling of where this is at, but we'll have more with that coming up next. Hey, Half Moon Sports Grill at 3rd Street and Greenway Parkway is having their 25th anniversary party tomorrow, March 1st, celebrating 25 fantastic years of being part of the community. The day will feature a DJ, inside food and drink specials, games, and so much more. That's tomorrow, March 1st, Half Moon Sports Grill 25th anniversary celebration. Well, coming up, it's our Sounds of the Night. That's next on ESPN 620, 98.7 HD2, and streaming live on ArizonaSports.com as we're live at Wright Toyota.
On Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B on ESPN 620 and 98.7 HD2.
Welcome back to Roc and Manuch. Jimmy B out here at Wright Toyota. Jax and myself, Manuch. Got Connor back there spinning the tunes, if you will. Hey, our State 40 Roofing, it's your call. Question of the day. State 40 Roofing, the number one referred roofer in Arizona, proudly serving the Arizona residential and commercial markets for over a decade. For a free quote, repair, or installation, head to state48roofing.com and follow them on social media by searching hashtag sexy roof status. with the combine going on and baseball going on, all these outstanding athletes, I thought we'd do something a little fun today here, Jax. And again, you go to at Roc and Manuch on Twitter to answer this question. Who do you consider the greatest two-sport athlete of all time? Is it Bo in football and baseball? Is it Neon Deion Sanders in football and baseball? How about Herschel, football and bobsledding? A lot of you didn't know that. Or the great Jim Brown, football or lacrosse, was an All-American in both, especially in lacrosse. So you go to at Roc and Manuch on Twitter. Jax, let that marinate a little bit. I know that some of those are kind of sorted before your time, but you look at a lot of the tape from yesteryear.
All of them before my time, definitely.
Have you seen any tape of Deion in baseball and football? How about Bo?
I think for me, and I was actually wondering, I usually put the question up on our Twitter this morning.
Yeah.
And it was random. I was expecting maybe a college basketball or an NFL combine, but I do like the creativity here. I just think Bo knows. I think Bo and what he did in the NFL and baseball, I would say him initially. I didn't know Herschel Walker did bobsledding or Jim Brown did lacrosse, so that's something you learn every day, but I'd lean Bo or here.
Now you know. Again, go to at Roc and Manuch on Twitter. Harris Sounds the night. Let's start it out with Bobo. Is he playing some ball or not? Here's a three-pointer assist from KD in last night's game.
Go to Bull at the top of the arc. He's going to fire a three and knock it down. Bull with his first points of the night. He's been playing excellent since making his way into the starting lineup.
You watch him, and he's smooth for 7'4", 7'5", whatever, 210 pounds soaking wet. So you look at his numbers. He's 6 for 10 from the field, 3 for 6 from three-point land, had the 15 points, 6 rebounds, had the 1 assist, and the 2 blocks. So I think you play him for the next, 23 games that they have? Let him play it out. But this team seems to move or have that guy on the outside. Looks like he can play the 4. He can play the 5. Damn. Seems like he can play the 3 with his as smooth as he is, handling the ball. Behind the back dribble, flip it in there for an assist last night. It's been fun to watch Bobo come alive here these last several games. I'm also a guy that's pretty much keeping the Suns in a lot of games or bringing them back. Here's KD with the three-pointer, tied all up, 55 all.
KD an open 3. He hits in the right corner. Durant making it look easy, and we're tied at 55. 2.5 minutes left to go in the first half, and KD now with 9 on the night.
KD doing his thing, Jax. I mean, he's doing all he can do.
He's so good.
28 points, had the 5 rebounds and 2 assists. Cut his turnovers down. He had the 2 turnovers. But, KD's doing all he can do. And I think when you look at the Phoenix Suns this year, whatever that mix is, there's going to be next year, Kevin Durant is doing all the things he can do in reference to that. This next one, you talk about Bobo, and we talked about his blocks. So Bobo with the block, getting out the book for a three-pointer to take that 4-point lead.
Tries a reverse layup, blocked by Bull, and he cleans it up off the rim and gives it to Tyus Jones. Here's Booker open for 3, and he hits.
Bull just didn't block it. He snuffed that one out, grabbed it, and started to break.
You're right on. He smothered that.
So next year, let's just say this year's a wash. If they make the playing games, it'll be on a wing and a prayer, right? So Bobo, an integral part of this team next year?
I think so. I mean,
has to be.
He's a cheap contract. You got to give him credit. He was kind of the guy that was on the end of the bench last year, and Kevin Durant gave him a lot of praise, saying that this guy's up and coming. And he's taken advantage of the opportunity given to him. I would see no reason why not to bring a guy like Bobo, a young prodigy center that's been in the system or been around the program for the last 2 years. I don't see why not.
You got to give Zion Williamson some love. I mean, that's the best, healthiest basketball game I think I've seen as a pro. And why wouldn't it be against the Phoenix Suns? Here's Zion with a massive dunk to get them back within 99 and 103.
Alvarado comes from behind and steals it, though. Hawkins gets it ahead to Zion. Look out. 2-hand jam for Zion Williamson. And a timeout for the Suns, who find themselves down 4 again.
The way he moves, what's he down to about, I'm going to say 250-ish, 255. What's he, 6'4", 6'5", somewhere in there. Just a big, strong kid. He looked healthy as hops. 27 points. He had the 11 assists, the 10 rebounds. He also had 2 blocks. His plus minus on the day was a plus 17. 13 for 17 in reference to field goals, taking it to the rack. I mean, he was strong. Nobody could stop him in reference to taking it to the rack on a consistent basis. Anybody want to get in front of him? He reminded me of a young, maybe a little thicker Charles Barkley when he was coming up, just going to the rack. Nobody could really stop him. Charles had a better jumper, that turnaround jumper. But I will say this, nobody could stop him from that standpoint. Let's go down to another McCallum, if you could, Connor. Here's McCallum. He had a 3-point dagger. This one pretty much gets this New Orleans team's late in the game up by 6 points.
But here's C.J. McCollum streaking to the rim. He'll throw it down for a little icing on the cake for the Pels.
Yeah, that one there, that hurt quite a bit. And you kind of just went, I'm watching the TV, Jax. I'm going, really? Seriously? You've now lost 7 out of 8. You're losing to New Orleans? You knew Zion was going to get his. You knew he'd eventually get his. The Murray, the kid that was just raining threes for this team early on, Trey Murphy III, coming out just raining threes, got him there, and they got that 16-point lead. But at the end of it, you go, the Suns can withstand the storm, and to lose, you just kind of sat back and went, I think that's it. I think that's pretty much your 3.5 back of Sacramento. There's really not much there now.
There's 23 games left, too. So you got all this chaos going on with Budenholzer and Booker. You lose a game last night that you were a 6.5-point favorite at home. You feel for the Suns fans. And you guys talked yesterday about Ishbia going out and being aggressive. Ooh. It's going to be a long off season of a bunch of movement. I saw on Get Up the other day, they were talking about where Kevin Durant could go. They were hypothetically talking the Thunder, the Knicks, the Mavericks, the Rockets. So you hope that you can get a haul back, but things aren't looking good for the Suns.
Yeah, and post-game, Kevin Durant, we heard a couple of sound bites from Devin Booker. Here's Kevin Durant basically saying we got killed by a couple of bad stretches.
Start the second. First of all, we gave up that tip in at the end of the quarter, which momentum is huge in this game. I'm sure they felt confident going back up 5 instead of a 1-possession game. Then they came out, hit us in the mouth. I think it was a 10-0 run or a 12-0 run. Got up 15. We walked it down, but it just takes a lot of energy to do that. You know what I'm saying? And turn it into a 1-point game in our favor. It's just we worked so hard to get that lead back, So, and then the start of the fourth quarter, too, they ran a little run as well. So, yeah, that's usually the tell of the game, man. When a team make a little spurt here throughout the game, a little 2-minute spurt that could change the whole game for you.
So I think that a lot of fans will realize just to get back in the game, I think that KD talked about right there, just how much energy is expanded. And you're down by 16 points just to get within 3 and then get it tied up or take that lead at halftime. You've used a lot of gas in that tank. But I think one of the guys that really pretty much controlled the game when it came down to the last 2 quarters was Zion Williamson. Here's Kevin Durant talking about how he controlled the game tonight.
Well, he got downhill whenever he wanted to. Especially once we switched that screen at the top of the key, he felt like he was in the paint easily. That's how great he is, man. He can pose as well, triple double. He controlled the game tonight.
Can somebody stop him? I mean, went down the paint at will, drove. Somebody want to take a charge? Anybody in front of him? A little forearm shiver.
1 minute.
Where's Dennis Rodman when you need him? Where's Bill Laimbeer when you need him? I mean, anything. But I don't see that kind of physicality or aggressiveness with this Phoenix Suns team to stop a guy. I mean, he went to the rack at will. And this is a commonality with this Phoenix Suns team, especially in closing time. We saw DeAndre Fox with San Antonio did that, about a week ago? De'Aaron Fox, about a week ago. At will. Nobody stopping him. Saw Zion do it last night. We saw Toronto get some big threes going to the rack. Nobody there at all to stop him. So hopefully sooner or later, tonight's game, they got some kind of kryptonite for Zion Williamson to somewhat stop him. As we mentioned earlier, you got the combine that's definitely going. And one of those individuals that I think a lot of pro scouts and coaches are looking at, one guy is Travis Hunter. And he was at the combine, and he talked just about playing both positions in the NFL. He said, nobody's ever done it that way. He said, I'm just different.
Uh, I did some meetings at receiver, did some meetings at DB, so still up in the air. They say nobody has ever done it for real the way I do it, but I tell them that I'm just different. I'm a different person.
So, not many guys have gone both ways in the National Football League. One of our State 4 Riffing Industry Call questions of the day, Deion Sanders would go periodically, would go one way or the other. He'd go receiver a couple of times, mostly defensive back. Can he make it work, Jax?
I wonder. I do think definitely packages whatever team they want. If they think of him as a corner, I definitely could see some wide receiver packages for him offensively. I think he's a wide receiver. If I had to pick one position for him, I think his playmaking ability, his spatial awareness, the way he attacks the football, I think he's a receiver first, but I do think he's got that similar ball skills on the defensive side as well.
Well, say goodbye to college football as a fair, balanced sport. Two-time Super Bowl champ Mark May gives us his thoughts on the latest SEC and Big Ten proposals for the playoffs and how the conditions at a team's facility affect the culture and play of the team. But first, here's Jax with your latest local 620 sports update. This is Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B now on ESPN 620 and 98.7 HD2.
It's now time for your Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B's bottom of the hour ESPN 620 sports update from Wright Toyota. I'm Jackson Groff. For those eagerly anticipating Arizona State Sun Devils running back Cam Scottabue's 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, don't hold your breath. Scottaboo announced today that he will be skipping nearly all the drills this week, opting to participate in only the vertical and broad jumps. He plans to have a full workout at Arizona State's Pro Day instead. Another potential opportunity, March 18th through the 21st, Big 12 Pro Day, where Scottaboo among 200-plus athletes expect to attend. There are multiple ways to listen to us, ESPN 620 AM on FM at 98.7 HD2, and always streaming live on ArizonaSports.com. Plus, check us out on our show pages on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Just search Roc and Manuch for upcoming live broadcasts and contests. Visit our new website, rocandmanuch.com. Thanks for joining us today. Mark May coming up next.
Now to talk everything football is two-time Super Bowl champion, a member of the
Making Mike's hot.
Redskins Hogs offensive line, 1981 first-round pick, earned All-American honors at Pitt, and a member of the College Football Hall of Fame, football analyst and commentator Mark May, now on ESPN 620.
That's right, Mark May joins us here on the right to the guest line, Roc and Manuch, Jimmy B. I bet Mark May never avoided any kind of drills at the combine. He was probably there looking for more drills to do after they shut the lights off there. How about you, Mark May? You ever miss any drills on purpose or say, nah, you got enough tape. You've seen enough. I'm good.
Back in the day, we didn't even have a combine. I went to Seattle and I went to Dallas where there were about 12 teams at each place. They basically gave you a couple of tests and talked to you and interviewed you. And that was about it. Well, back in the day, they came to Pitt, and we had a Pitt workout day because we had so many players that were going to be drafted. We had, I think 13 players get drafted and another 7 or 8 played in the USFL. So they came to Pitt and worked us out at Pitt. The only thing I remember is there was a coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, an offensive line coach. His name was Dan Radikowski. They used to call him Bad Rad. And he was one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. He came up and he worked out Russ Grimm and myself for 2 hours, 15 minutes, doing drills around cone drills in the locker room because it was raining outside, doing all these drills in the locker room. Then afterwards, he comes up to me and he goes, hey, that was a great workout, Mark, but we're not going to draft. I'm like, what? He goes, oh, you're going to be gone by the time we draft. You son of a gun. It was I've never been so ticked off at a coach in my life. I mean, he worked us like dogs. I mean, it was like a big time, long time. It was like a practice workout. And then at the end of it, he's, oh, we're not going to draft. You're going to be gone by the time we draft. It was like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I think the name of that group, because they went around in my rookie year in '79, it was the Bledsoe group that represented Dallas, Seattle, 5, 6, 7 teams. But the one thing about that, Mark, is they wanted me to go play baseball that spring after my senior in football. And then they said, you have a chance to get drafted as well. But I went, well, wait a second. Scouts, coaches, GMs, to your point, offensive court, they're going to be around. So if they're going to call you on a Monday morning at 10 and say, hey, Mark, we're going to be there at 4:30 to work you and the 5 or 6 other guys out. You had to be available, and you showed up. You didn't tell them, hey, look, you got enough tape. I'm moving on. I'll just wait for the draft.
That never happened. Not even with Hugh Green or anybody like that. Randy McMillan, Hugh Green, myself, were all drafted in the first round. I couldn't fathom anybody doing that because at the time you wanted to get drafted.
Sure.
It wasn't like the luxury of yes, I'll give you some of my time to meet with you. It was like, no, be there at 4 o'clock, and you were there at 3:30 because you wanted to impress them, particularly if they were the teams that were in the top 10 or top 12, because at that time you didn't know where you were going to be drafted. That was basically when Mel Kiper first formed, when his father first formed the draft and the pre-draft stuff. And that was in, the early 1980s, 1980, 1981. So that was the beginning of the draft process where it was on radio. Then it got to be on ESPN and on TV years later. So at that time, you had to be there because basically the way of communication was you got a telephone call on your landline phone line, boys and girls. Way back then, the rotary phones, you got a call and it said to be here at this time, and that was it. It wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't, well, I'll text you back later. No, you had to have your butt there if you wanted to get drafted.
Mark, the NFL Combine started yesterday. Defensive linemen and linebackers. I know the Arizona Cardinals are one of many teams that looked at that group closely, very deep class. Any guys stick out to you either yesterday or when you take a look at the defensive line class as a whole that you think the Cardinals should keen an eye on and select at 16?
Well, it all depends who's going to be available. If Abdul Carter's available, it all depends how his foot is. They say he's not going to have an operation, so now he's got to probably be the most scrutinized player in the draft because guess what? He may be the number 1 pick as a defensive end or rush end. He has a foot problem. So do you go in and you have your medical staff go in? Because every team that's in the top 20 are probably going to go in and have their medical staff at Penn State checking out that foot to make sure that he's all right, that he's 100% to go. Because you don't want to use your draft capital that early in the draft and have a player not be available to you that year, as the Cardinals did last year. Their first-round draft pick wasn't available to them last year, and he was basically on the bench most of the year. So you've got to make sure that that player is healthy first, and you've got to go out there and get. I look at Tennessee. Tennessee's got a handful of linemen. Ole Miss has a handful of linemen that are going to get drafted probably in the first round or close to the top. Those are the guys that may fall to where the Cardinals pick. That's where they should be looking and spending most of their time in their draft capital time. But if they're dumb enough to go after somebody that's going to be drafted in top 10, which they know they're not going to get unless they move up in the draft, that's just a waste of time and a waste of draft capital.
Do you trade it and get more picks, or do you think that priority is that defensive tackle if that top-notch tackle's there?
Well, it all depends what happens in free agency. It all depends who falls in free agency, because you don't really know right now until free agency opens up and who you can sign and who you won't sign, because you're not going to get the pick of the litter in free agency unless somebody's at the end of their career. We all know that. You're not going to come here because most players in the prime of their career, one, they want to get the bag, but most importantly, they want a chance to get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. So that's their first priorities. So that knocks the Cardinals out of the picture right away. If you're at your end of your career, like a J.J. Watt, and you're only going to spend another couple of years in the league, you go get the money at the end of your career, and you'll sign with a team like the Cardinals, and hopefully you'll be productive for them.
Last thing before we move on to the SEC and the Big Ten and the playoffs, just your thoughts on the report cards that came out on all the teams and how the conditions were there in Washington. So
where this is going to go with him, right?
How much? Yeah, I know it is. How much does it affect that in the locker room? And they talked about family members not getting passes on the sideline. I know I gave you a little love the other day. Are you still in the hunt for a pass anywhere in there?
Yeah, maybe I can get one, but I'll probably get one for the Commanders or for the Chargers much before I'll get one for this team, the Cardinals, where I live in Arizona. So that's not going to happen with Fredo as long as he's still at the helm. But this is a team that we all know. Everybody knew it. Like I said before, players talk.
Yes, they do.
If you're in a bad situation, if you got drafted by the Cardinals and it's a crappy facility, it's a crappy weight room, you don't like the training staff, the owner's a jerk, why would you go out there and promote this team? You may do it publicly, but privately when you talk to your friends in the league, you're going to dog this team. You're going to say, why in the world do you want to come here? The weather's great, but besides that, there's nothing else to offer with this. Because look at guys, they go to the playoffs average, once every decade? Go back and look at the last since they've been in Arizona.
Yeah.
Basically, they go to the playoffs maybe once every decade.
Yeah,
you don't want to be part of that situation. You want to be part of a team. Kansas City, go there. San Francisco, go there. Go to the Rams, go there. Go to Philadelphia, go there. Teams that have an opportunity that that are probably going to have a shot at getting into the playoffs.
Mark, I want to ask you your opinion on the greedy SEC, Big Ten, as they're moving closer to football. Dictatorship is what you're seeing out there.
Big word.
In regards to guaranteeing them more spots, the most spots. How are you taking that?
Well, it's always the rich get richer, and you know it was going to come down to this.
Yeah.
What it's going to come down to, guys, is they're going to keep pushing for the top 4 seeded teams because they know there's probably most likely one year there's going to be 2 from the SEC and 2 from the Big Ten, or there's going to be they're definitely going to get 1 from each conference in regardless. So there's going to be a possibility of getting 2 in. So we know that's going to happen for the seeding for the top 4. They're going to push for that because it's all about the money. No matter what happens, if you look at the whole picture, what NIL did is they exposed everything. And what Ohio State did this year is they bought a national championship. So if you look at their format, the way that they did it, that's the blueprint for the future until things change. So if you want to win in college football, you go out there and you buy the best of players that are available.
2 minutes.
Your roster for a year and go win a national championship and just forget about it after that. Because that's what it's going to come down to in the next few years. And that's what seeding is going to do. Because if you look at the money, when you're seeded that way, the more money you get. Each round you get more money. So basically, if you're sitting at home, you're getting a check. If you're seated and you get that first buy, you're still getting a check.
So what the Big Ten says, well, we'll bring this up again. If it doesn't change, we'll bring it up again when we get the new TV contract with ESPN. So is ESPN going to, is this the tail wagging the dog? They're in bed with the ESPN and they'll dictate that eventually if nothing changes the next year or two?
Well, what happens is I think what the commissioners are finally figuring out now is they're going to be running the show in the future because it was always the television contracts that they had with ESPN or Fox or whatever, right. CBS. They usually dictated to the conferences or they dictated to them from top to bottom. It was like, this is what we're going to give you. If Fox doesn't match it or CBS doesn't match it, you're stuck with ESPN, ABC. That was the deal. Now they're going to go around with this playoff, the way that it's seeded around. They're going to sit there and say, you know what, we want more money for this because guess what? We're playing more games, and we feel that if we're playing more games and we get the home game in our stadium the first round after the bye, and then after that we win again, guess what? This $4 or $5 or $6 million just isn't enough per team. We want $8 to $10 million. What's ESPN, ABC going to do, and what's CBS and Fox going to do after that? They're going to turn to Amazon, and then all of a sudden we're going to be watching on Paramount. We're going to pay for every playoff game. That's what's going to happen down the road. In 10 years, guys, if we're still around and we're live, 10 years, I guarantee we're going to have it pay-per-view for these playoffs and the Super Bowl.
So if I understand, if you win the conference championships, no buys, if they don't have any buys, it won't make any difference. It'll just only help your ranking per se in reference to helping your seeding is what I see with no buys involved. Is that how I understand that?
What they're arguing about now is the seeding because the seeding is most important. They don't want the automatic bid for conferences.
Right.
So
okay.
If they seed 2 from the 8, 2 from the SEC, and 2 from the Big Ten in the top 4, they will get the bye.
Got it.
Everything else is if that's what they want. That's what they're pushing for in the SEC and the Big Ten because they know that
about a minute left.
Teams in the country. So that's what they're pushing for. If they can get the first bye and they can sit at home and they know the next game they're going to be playing Guess what? Their own backyard.
Hey,
So why wouldn't you want to do that if you're the Big Ten or the SEC? The ACC has no power. The Big 12 doesn't have enough power to turn that. You know, the future Pac-12, what are they going to be? They're not going to get in.
well,
So you're looking at the situation and you're sitting there. If you're Georgia and Kirby Smart and you're sitting there and you're watching Boise State at home watching you, do you think he's a happy camper? And Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, do you think that really settled with him? I don't think so. I think these commissioners they're really going to put the pressure on these television networks. It's going to be fun to watch.
what about, you say the ACC and the Big 12 don't have the power, and you're right, but now with private equity groups now getting involved and trying to buy these colleges, these universities, could you see a big private equity, group come in and say, all right, he's a former Big 12 grad and he wants to put them on the map? I mean, money could change all this, right?
It did for SMU last year. That's basically what happened for SMU.
Yeah, good
A
point.
lot of money people got together in their Texas oil money, and they put a lot of money into the SEC, the SMU program. They ended up making the playoff last year. You may see a couple of those for schools, but I don't know about conferences. Here's the bottom line. If you look at the way the conferences are set up with the money, all the money basically, if you look at it, it's in the Big Ten and the SEC, and then possibly the Big 12 with all those schools in Oklahoma and Texas. That's where the money is. So in the future, you may see a Big 12, probably not the entire conference, but you may see a Baylor, a TCU,
Clear to wrap.
any of those schools out there, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. Those schools will have money because they've got deep pockets because of the oil industry, and the oil industry is definitely coming back in the next few years. We all know that with a new president in office. So guess what? That's going to be more money for them. So all of a sudden, you may see one of those Baylors. You may see one of those TCU step up with the big money, because when Gary Patterson was at TCU, they had a lot of money. Those schools, when they had the BCS, when they were going to like the Rose Bowl and stuff like that and having a chance, that's because of the money from the alumni that they had at TCU. So if you get schools around the country that does have that big donor, you may get a school, but I don't think you're going to get the entire conference like the SEC and the Big Ten.
Mark, thank you as always. Have a great weekend.
Have at it, guys. Take care.
That's Mark May joining us here on Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B here on ESPN 620. He's brought to you today by All City Towing. Join the team at the largest towing company in the state. Of course, that is All City Towing. If you go to allcitytowing.com, you'll see all the jobs that they have available, all the benefits. It's all right there at allcitytowing.com. So if you're ready to take your career to the next level, then visit them at allcitytowing.com. All City Towing, where your future is on the move. Coming up, some things to look forward to. Now, we are here at the end of February, going into March tomorrow. It's Roc and Manuch right here from Wright Toyota.
Guys are live from Wright Toyota. Right on the corner, right on the price. Wright Toyota, located at 77th Street at Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard in Scottsdale. Now back to the guys on ESPN 620.
All right, 41 years ago, this song, Beat It by Michael Jackson, was the record of the year. It won 8 Grammy Awards because of the album that it was on, that being Thriller. Police won the best song of the year, Every Breath You Take. Culture Club, which was your favorite, won the best new artist. 36 years ago today, 1989, Coach, starring Craig T. Nelson, debuted on ABC. It lasted until 1997.
Good show.
8 years. Great show.
Good show. I liked it.
Love Coach. It was a great show. 2021, the first games of spring training are played. And it was basically 1 year after what had went down with COVID. And MLB was planning to play a full season that year. And if you remember, there were some spectators that were allowed to be there. They limited it to like 25% at the ballpark.
I remember that.
You go back to that. You just, I mean, there's conspiracy theories and all that stuff about, the actuality of that, of what you could do and what you couldn't do. Of course, it was a deadly disease. We know that. It was horrible. But did the mask really work and all that kind of stuff, or could you not be at a game? You're outside. I mean, it's funny to me, and I shouldn't say it's funny to me, but it's interesting to me when you see someone driving in a car by themselves and they have a mask on.
Yes,
I've never understood.
I've noticed that.
You see it quite a bit.
Yeah, you do.
And you're like, Now, okay, an Uber driver, doesn't want to,
be exposed to germs.
But you're like, okay.
Well, right now, I've seen it more off because of this this influenza, the flu that's going around. In fact, I've had several people I know that have had it. They've had the same or worse symptoms than there was with COVID.
Yeah, I had it. I was sick for a couple weeks.
Yeah, you had it for a good couple weeks.
Yeah.
And but yeah, you're seeing it more and more because it's that time of year.
I know, but
allergies,
I'm not going to wear a mask.
Influenza.
It's like you wonder if those people are wearing a mask in their own house too. If you're wearing it in your car, are you walking around your house like you're jumping in the shower and you put, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I whatever.
Hey, double protection, Rock.
A few things to look forward to tomorrow. And by the way, we're out here at Wright Toyota, and it is the last day of the month. And your Uncle Rock give you a little advice. The best time to buy a car is at the end of the month because they're trying to hit numbers. And the fact that this is the shortest month of the year means that they're selling less units, so they're going to be more aggressive to hit the numbers. So if you are in the market for a new or pre-owned vehicle, Wright Toyota in North Scottsdale, open till about at least 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock tonight. All right, here's what we can say. We can say so long to February, and here are a few things to look forward to in March. Daylight savings time is next Sunday.
Okay, thank you.
And most people around the world will, at least in the United States or we're all over the place, will lose an hour of sleep that night. But it won't get dark so early anymore. And then the 20th of March will be the first day of spring. I'm hoping, there are a lot of things that are being, a lot of changes in the federal government. I know I thought past many years ago that we were going to stay with daylight savings time to be 3 hours, which for what we do, selfishly, we wish it would stay. I personally love 3 hours so you can watch baseball games at 4 o'clock all the time, sporting events at 4 o'clock that start at 7 o'clock on the East Coast. I mean, I think anybody who lives here loves that too. I mean, that's why California loves it.
I think, don't quote me, this is the last year.
Well, I thought that was last year.
I did too.
That. So,
because we've been talking about this.
Somebody, help us out.
Yeah.
March Madness, it's almost here.
Can't wait.
Selection Sunday is the day before St. Patty's Day, the 16th. Then the men will get started on the 18th and the women on the next day. The new Major League Baseball season gets underway in a few weeks. It'll start on March 18th as the Cubs and Dodgers will play in Japan. And then opening day for everyone else is on March 27th. On the TV, the Oscars are this Sunday. Grey's Anatomy and 911 return as well. So there's some pretty big shows. One of my favorite, Bill Burr. He's got a new stand-up that hits Hula on the 14th. Seth Rogen's got a new Apple TV series, The Studio, which starts on the 26th. The Simpsons, they are returning.
How many years is this?
37th season.
37
That
seasons.
will be on the 30th. What other day? Okay, we talked about St. Patty's Day. We know about that. National Cereal Day. Who cares? That's the 7th. National Ranch Day. Who cares? That's the 10th.
Do you ever eat cereal anymore? Ever? If you do, what would it be? What's your go-to cereal?
No, I do. What do I have? It's like a Special K or something.
Something.
I eat it at night.
Something like healthy. I do that too sometimes.
Yeah, I do
have
it at
a
night.
bowl of cereal at night.
It's like if I'm like hungry, like
Yeah.
munchy hungry or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Pour
pour
cereal.
some syrup.
Whole milk, skim milk.
2%.
That's
1%.
That's good. You're staying healthy then, Rock.
I don't know about that. Look at me. Waffle Day is on the 25th, and this one's big for you and Jimmy. On the 27th, mark this day. Write it down.
I got it.
It's National Viagra Day. So just so you know. So have that.
Any little bit helps, Rock. Any little bit helps.
Oh, really? So tell me about that.
That's right here. Any little bit helps.
That's what
right
you
here.
hear.
People say any little bit helps.
I don't know about that.
You know what's funny is you see all these commercials, guys in their 50s and 60s. There are ads now going, even if you're in your 40s, anybody can use that boost you might need. I'm like, well, okay, anybody that's the testosterone starts to fade on you, then so be it.
Yeah, if you didn't hear yesterday, some football at 50, we're a little late, but Travis Kelce will play next year, as Pat McAfee made that confirmation yesterday. I mean, it's all about Pat McAfee, so good to see that. Cam Ward says he's not throwing at the NFL Scouting Combine, and he pointed out that Miami's season opener against Florida, and that was that come from behind win, the 39-38 against Cal. Is all you need to do. Just pop that tape in. Right? Is that what you're basically saying?
Well, and a lot of it
pop
is
that tape in.
And they all tell you, hey, it's the tape. He says, hey, look, I've got 5 years of tape. You can watch some of my top games, how I performed. He's doing the interview process. I think he will be throwing at his pro day. And he's working with a quarterback coach down in Dallas. There's a few other guys down there, too, that are working out. So they know,
2.5 minutes.
These scouts and these coaches know he's getting good coaching. He's getting his fundamentals down pat. And if he does throw at his pro day, they can go down there and see his own receivers, own timing, and actually be like a real scripted session versus what they're going to see out there at the pro day.
Seems like more and more players don't want to throw, don't want to run, don't want to do anything.
But they will though. Majority of those are going to still run at their pro day, so they're still going to those that are interested.
But you can make yourself look really good on pro day, can't you?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, you can, and that's
you got your receivers, you got your field, you got your ball, you got everything.
Well,
you're not using your Indiana U football. You're using whatever the footballs are there at
NFL ball,
in a ball. Well, that's what I meant. Yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah.
But in the case of Cam Scatterboom,
let me ask you. I'm sorry. I know Cam's not doing it, which I don't understand.
What's either the broad jump and the vertical jump? So I wonder if he's not going to do it in the 40s, if he's got some hamstring issues or back issues or that kind of thing. So he's going to interviews. He'll be there for just about everything. But again,
I've heard more.
I've
heard some different reports that he was not going to go do anything, but I guess he is doing some.
He's doing the my sports update I did earlier. I don't know if you heard it.
I did. I heard it. One ear, what the other.
Didn't listen.
Yeah. I was waiting for a Diamondback score, but I didn't hear it.
But yeah, he is doing the broad and the vertical. But that's a guy to me where I know the comment doesn't mean a whole lot. But that's a guy, Scatterboom, you could just elevate yourself.
I agree,
such
man.
A deep running back class.
I agree.
I so agree. Absolutely.
I agree.
If I was the general manager and I had the number one pick, and I know the Titans need a quarterback, I don't care. I want Travis Hunter. I think he's the best player in football. I think he is a game changer. Why wouldn't he be the number one pick overall?
Receiver, defensive back, nickel back.
He's unbelievable.
Punt return, kickoff return.
Those guys don't come around that often. Gosh. All right, hour number 2 is coming up. We will get into some more NCAA news and Big 12 news I want to pass along. Scott Spreitzer, we're going to do some picks, some locks. So we got that, and we'll have our own locks. A little bit later, we'll bring back Mark May and Yogi Roth. So we'll have that talking some Big Ten with him. It's Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B, ESPN 620 from Right to You.
It's Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B, now on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2, and streaming live at arizonasports.com. The guys are powered by the law offices of Lerner and Rowe. In a wreck and need a check? Make one call, that's all. 602-977-1900. And now on your ESPN station in Phoenix, ESPN 620, Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B.
Hope you're having a great Friday afternoon. It was 91 in my car on the way here.
But
91.
It's going to cool down next week, Rock. Low 70s next week.
You promise?
That's what they say.
What means they?
The weathermen last couple nights said we got some breezes coming in this weekend.
You only watch weathermen? I mean, isn't it weather person?
Weather person, whatever. Yeah, they said that we'll be mid-80s this weekend. Monday, we got a cooling coming with the winds about 70 to 72 the next week or so.
Are you saying I could, the pullovers, the light jackets, I don't have to put away yet?
Not yet, because the mornings will be a little cool, a little chilly. Yeah, about 50, 52 for the low. But next week, you might see high 40s for the low. So just if you're out there in the morning, just a little light sweater.
All right, thanks, Dan.
You're welcome.
The NCAA recorded nearly $1.4 billion in revenue for the fiscal year of 2024. That's the best in at least 2 decades. It represents nearly $91 million of increased revenue from the year before. $91 million. And the new statement is the first that reflects the NCAA's anticipated liability of nearly $2.8 billion from all those damages as part of the proposed settlement for the athlete compensation and the antitrust stuff and all that stuff. It's nuts, but it's going to be interesting on the future of the NCAA because that's some record amounts of money, and it's just going to keep going up, you think. But
sure,
you wonder what's going to happen with the NCAA in general, because if the Big Ten and the SEC do end up creating a dictatorship, which they're going down that road right now, do they even need the NCAA?
I was just going to say,
just say, hey, we're going on our own.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you're going to stop all our schools?
Sure.
Probably not.
Because the money is going to keep flowing in with the TV contracts, with their revenue, their stadiums. You might see, hey, let's not limit it. I don't just say Big Ten, SEC. How about the ACC joins in? How about the Big 12 joins in? How about the new Pac-12, whoever that is, they join in? How about all the major conferences? There might be a few FCS that want to join in as well, too, to formulate their own deal, football, basketball, baseball, and say, heck with you, NCAA, we're moving on. So that could be, Rock. You could see, you talk about the two, you might see 4, 5, 6 say, wow, all this money coming in. How about we try to get a piece of that pie as long as those TV contracts are there?
Well, it's not just the TV contracts. I mentioned to Mark May earlier about these private equity companies that want to come in.
That's
and the Big 12 yesterday and the Big 12 president, and the ADs said they are down to 3 finalists for a capital partner for the conference. And these firms would infuse millions and millions of dollars. The big one is called Redbird Capital. So remember that, Redbird Capital. They've emerged as the leader. And this decision, according to some reports, could come in as soon as next week. And this proposal is a capital proposal, not an equity. And last year we reported that there was another company called CVC Capital Partners, and that was a premature report that came out. There was really no substance to it, but somebody let it out, and they said that there was going to be something with these guys, but they never reached anywhere. There were too many hang-ups and things like that. But now, as reported, 3 finalists, and Redbird Capital right now is the leader in the clubhouse.
Well, when you see the kind of money that's coming in, these guys want to get, they want to incorporate or invest. I wonder what kind of return they're looking to get with their investment. So let's say they put I'm going to say $50 million, $100 million a year. What kind of number
per school?
Per school. Yeah. So, but if they put that in, are they looking for just the advertising dollars? Are they looking for their net rate of return? What exactly are they looking for that makes sense for them to put $50 million per school, per the Big 12 or some of the others, the Big 10, whatever that is? They're not just going to incorporate the capital and not see something in return. I would think, say, if you got the 16 schools and you got close to $1 billion in reference to what you're putting in every year, are they going to get that in return or break even? That's if I'm an investor, my whole thing is, okay, so I'm going to put this capital, I'm going to infuse you. So what am I going to get out of it? Or is it something over a 10, 12, 15-year period? That'd be my first question.
But they're tapping into much more than that. They're tapping into every student.
Sure.
When it comes to that database of students, not just student athletes, but students,
point, yeah.
And utilize that. Data is everything. People will pay millions and millions and billions of dollars for data to be able to then, market to them and then sell to different companies, third parties, fourth parties, whatever, fifth parties that basically say, hey, Verizon Wireless or AT&T, to be able to tap into all of those schools and directly be able to send them an email and go after them and try to get their
market
business,
their product, and
just go on and on and on.
That's vitally important. I never realized that it could be as far as marketing their wares and going after the students, coaches,
because they got to generate some revenue, somewhere.
Yeah, that was my whole point. Where are they looking to generate their revenue? Where they're getting their return?
Students, not to mention the TV contracts and all that other stuff. HBO's Hard Knocks will pivot to covering college football and a college football team this offseason. Take a wild guess who it's going to be.
We just found out during the break.
Yep, Bill Belichick, UNC, and NFL Films is jumped in on this. And, of course, we know Belichick and his 24 years with the Patriots. He was never featured on Hard Knocks as a Patriot. And
really?
Here, they never did that. So I'm anxious to see how this all goes. You got their general manager, Michael Lombardi, who's very TV savvy. This will probably be a really cool Hard Knocks, being able to go behind the scenes to what's going on at UNC and his son and everything else that goes with this.
And the college kids too. You'll have the 18 to 22-year-old college kid. Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. My whole question is, I wonder why every team in the National Football League turned down Hard Knocks. You know what I mean?
Why would you want to do it?
Well,
I wouldn't want my team to do it.
Well, I to a point, but I thought
there was too much.
I thought there was a mandate
drama
by the commission that they had to. I guess not.
No, there was a formula that they were using for years that you
couldn't go after a new head coach, a new coach. That was one of them.
I don't know what that formula was, but there is a formula. If we look it up, how do you get on Hard Knocks? I mean, I think there was one because I know they had to change something to go with the Jets twice.
3 minutes.
Because, they with the Jets. I remember I was on Hard Knocks. The Jets
I remember that, Rock.
I was doing I worked
catching punts.
Yeah, I was catching punts.
Passing towels
the
out.
Panthers. And I remember Sanchez in the locker room. And, my job was basically that day to get all their locker crap and put it on the plane. I literally went in the plane.
Don't you think also that enough people have seen the pro NFL camps that maybe this will be refreshing to see what a college camp looks like?
Because it's people still like the NFL. I don't think that's never going to change.
I love it, but I mean, I'm just saying, there's at some point they get a little stoic or get a little guarded with that. But for me, this will be refreshing.
So I asked ChatGPT. I said, "How does Hard Knocks select an NFL team?" Also, ChatGPT, love it. AI, love it. Have you ever used ChatGPT before?
Really?
I should ask Manuch, actually.
Yeah.
You're
or
more
Jimmy. Jimmy's like, what's AI? What's his name? Oh, you mean Allen Iverson?
I do know AI. I do know AI.
So a team is eligible if it doesn't have the following: a first-year head coach, have made the playoffs in the past 2 seasons, and have appeared in Hard Knocks the last 10 years. If a team meets all 3 conditions, the NFL can force them to participate.
See,
I also think it's a Roger Goodell ownership deal. Like if he's so close with Kraft, maybe Kraft said, "Hey, I don't want this." And Kraft's going to, it's got some pullover, probably Goodell.
So to that point, Ron, he probably went to Goodell behind the scenes.
Because how would you not want to do a Hard Knocks with Tom Brady in his heyday?
You would
right?
think. That,
I think the Raiders would be the team if I had to pick one with Pete Carroll,
I think they've done
Chip
twice
Kelly.
already.
That is true. They
They've
have done
twice.
a lot.
But I mean, I would have no problem with Pete Carroll, his enthusiasm, and you're trying to whip that team into shape, whoever their quarterback's going to be.
Or maybe they want their attention like they did the AFC North this year. Maybe they want to kind of have that attention of a whole division during in season. I don't know if you guys watched that. That was pretty cool how they got the different perspectives of the Ravens, Bengals, Browns, and Steelers.
I watch it. It's I just kind of go, okay, they do so many things different now than we were playing. It's kind of like, but having a camera around you all the time.
That's why these GMs and these coaches, these old school coaches, Bill Belichick didn't want it. It's amazing how he has done a 180, from his days as this ornery, no response coach to now, he's got 5, 6, 7 different TV shows.
A minute left.
I mean, it's
He's
crazy.
really come out of his shell, hasn't he? I mean, maybe his young girlfriend's like, hey, open up a little bit, Bill. Let him see the true Bill Belichick. Let him see how you actually coach. It'll be fun to see the North Carolina team out there prepping, how he tries to get them back to, moving them up. And my interest will be with the general manager, getting him Lombardi, how he handles so much of the NIL things, whatever they can show or disclose, and how he handles the players and quality control. And here's where you're at right now. And then I'm going to be interested in is if it goes the whole season, how they handle the recruiting that comes through there.
I think it's only going to be the
training
fall
camp?
Yeah, I think it's only going to be the training camp.
See, I love it when they do the whole season. I remember Notre Dame.
That might be too much for Bill.
You may be right, but then again,
it's fun to see.
He may be, because he did so much this past year, he's liking those paychecks.
He might.
And maybe he's like, all right, and there's green shakes going or something behind the scenes. Like, all right, Bill, we're gonna do a whole year. Are you okay with that? And no. Well, how's $1 million sound?
It's not the NFL anymore, Bill. Lighten up. It's college kids, and so I'm sure. But I enjoyed the whole season, Hard Knocks, because it kind of showed the players what they're dealing with, the ups, the downs of the college kid.
I don't like Hard Knocks now because you can watch it all the time. I loved when you had to. It was every week, and it was appointment television.
Exactly right. Yep.
You could tape it.
Yeah.
But you couldn't, like, now you can watch, you can watch it all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas I love the fact that you had to wait because, all right, it's coming out next week.
Sure. And there'd be like breaking stories during the week.
Yeah.
And you go, man, how are they going to cover this? So-and-so left camp.
It seems like there's too much access now for that.
When what's his name with Brown was with the Raiders.
Antonio Brown.
Oh my God.
Man.
When that broke, you're like, we got to watch it this week.
Speaking of broke, I'm anxious, and we'll talk about it next, how a NBA reporter knows that a coach tells a player something. We'll get into that next. Roc and Manuch, Jimmy B from Wright Toyota.
Scottsdale. Now back to the guys on ESPN 620.
I was told that weeks ago, Mike Budenholzer called his star guard Devin Booker into his office to issue a complaint. And that complaint, I'm told, was that Booker was being too vocal on the court and during timeout huddles.
Making Mike's hot.
Or his star guard to tone it down to allow for the coach's voice to be heard. This completely shocked Booker, I was told.
Chris Haynes, ESPN. Everyone's talking about the story today. And for someone who's been on the team side, you have as well, Manuch. I don't know how that information would ever come out. I don't know who would actually call Chris Haynes, unless he's tight with one player there.
Unless it was Booker. Unless it was Book.
Do you really think Book is that guy?
I don't think so, but
no,
I mean,
I don't either. And why would Book want to tell somebody that? I mean, he's too much of a company guy, isn't he? I mean, he's such a good dude. I don't see that's his character.
I don't either.
But for Coach Bud to do that, all right, maybe that happened. But it's funny because things like this come out all the time when teams are losing. There could have been, if this team was winning and this happened, nobody would have found out about it.
Yeah.
Ever. It's only when they're losing that people I think are embellishing stories. Maybe Bud did bring in Book, and they did talk. But was it really, hey, you're too loud on the court? Oh, come on. Do you really think that would be the case?
Here's how I interpret that. That's listened to a couple times now. The complaint is, here's how I somewhat Booker that Coach Bud tell him, look, when we get to the huddle, I need you to pipe it down a little bit. I understand you talking to guys, but I need to give the play, set the defense up or whatever. So if you're going to talk, let me go ahead and finish what I want to talk about. Then if you want to grab guys and pull guys aside for whatever reason, like CP3 used to do, he'd go to a DA or he'd go to the Twin, go over there, or the Book and just tell them. So when I hear that again, it almost seems like, okay, Coach Bud said, let me get my point across. Let me go ahead and make the changes we need to make, and then you can talk, versus if you're going to be chiming in and talking all the time while I'm trying to give the play, then I need you to stop. So, I mean, I hear that again. That's where I'm leaning toward, Rock, versus having a complaint. Well, he's communicating too much. But I just kind of see that he wanted to get his point across, and then Book could talk to whomever. I mean, that's kind of one way I can interpret that.
And then, a Durant who's been around a while, he says, I don't want to say the wrong thing and people take it out of context. So I'm going to disagree that we got to get better. I mean, he took the high road because I think he knows that things get misinterpreted.
Yeah.
And then they get out to the media. And now with social media, it gets even more overblown.
Yeah.
And it's not actual.
Yeah. I
don't buy that. I mean, wouldn't Coach Bud come out and just bite this right? I mean, bite it and say, hey, that's not accurate.
I think that he might feel that's even silly to back that comment up and just say, look, and just so you know, my comments are this. He made me think, I don't even waste my time with something like that.
Yeah.
What we say happens, what we say stays in house, doesn't get outside this building.
That hurts. That makes it worse.
Well, but again, that's, what happens in the locker room stays in the locker room.
Yeah, but it makes it worse by you saying that. Because that means you're hiding something.
Not necessarily. He doesn't want to address it.
He shouldn't. He doesn't have to. I agree.
No.
But it's not the reality we live in,
I know.
right? I mean, it's all about information.
We want to pull
especially when a team is getting destroyed. And, we have our locks coming up. I think the Suns are going to get blown out again tonight.
Oh, my God. I don't hope not.
What was funny is, like, last night watching a game with some Suns fans, some really diehard Suns fans, and said, if they lose this game, blow up the whole team. I'm done. And these are diehards. And I'm like, oh, come on, dude. I go, and then I said, because they're like, the Pelicans suck. And I'm like,
and they do.
I go, the Suns are the same level.
Yeah.
I said, I think people sometimes forget the reality of the team that they're following, the Phoenix Suns. They're not a good basketball team. Sadly, they should be with the talent they have on this. And if Beal doesn't go tonight, it could be the same thing. And Zion Williamson has a career game. It's like,
another
geez.
triple-double. I just think that watching this Suns team, I mean, you get 6 turnovers in the fourth quarter. You go cold shooting. You get beat by an NBA team. Zion Williams, they're still players. Murphy the third was lighting up with his threes. They're still decent players, but if you can't get stops and you give the ball away and you throw the ball away in reference to that fourth quarter, then you're going to lose that game. And that game was something where the Suns could have easily taken control in the fourth quarter, but they couldn't hit anything. And then Zion Williamson going to the rack time after time after time after
They've
time.
always had trouble against the big guys.
They have, and we saw that. We've seen this when you lose 7 out of 8. Common denominator is allowing guys to go to the rim, allowing offensive rebounds, getting turnovers the most in an opportunistic time, and just basically falling apart. So Booker now is finally saying, hey, look, there's a lot of things we communicate about, a lot of things we talk about that aren't going on. He said, quote, we go silent when things get tough. When things get tough, that's when you have to communicate even more. I mean, last night where KD got the ball at the top of the key, and Plumlee was standing at 3 or 4 feet in front of him, and he yelled at him. He goes, "Move!" And it's stuff like that you go, why isn't he moving? Why isn't he's got the ball? Plumlee, get the hell out of there.
Yeah,
clear him out. I mean, just stuff like that. Which
about 4 minutes.
It's a little bit too much too late for the Suns to be getting in each other's grill to play better.
it's not often that you play a team back to back, at your own home court. Suns are 2-10 on back to backs. 2-10. They're gonna lose tonight. They're gonna lose.
I hope not.
2-10.
My lock is that they're the lock. They're 6 and
they're not. Well, they're 2-10 on back to back games this season.
It's just it's amazing. You see,
because and I bet it may be a situation where if Beal doesn't go, I mean, they're already shorthanded a little bit. I mean, is this going to be a low management game for one of the two stars?
I don't know. I mean, hey, at least Bobo's playing good basketball. I mean,
whatever. That's sad that he's even playing.
Well, Brockman, he's being productive. He's got blocks. He's got assists.
Yeah.
He's playing. I mean, he's like a plus 12. Every game he's had, pretty much, he's been a plus 10 and plus 12. So he's been effective. It's been the other guys that haven't done anything. Plumlee's really been hurting this team. That's his concern.
It's just, I think that, it's a broken record.
It is.
And it's like you hear the lack of energy, the lack of intensity. I mean, those are the things you see. And you don't even have to play the game to see that they just don't look. They're kind of lifeless at points.
Yeah, I think,
and like you recognize the fourth quarter. They went so cold in that last quarter. They shot 9 of 25. Yeah. They were 2 of 14 from the 3-point range. That's just nuts. Plus, how can you be that cold?
Plus the 6 turnovers, you get the 14.
That's about normal though.
I mean, that's sad. But the turnovers, Rock, are in the fourth
time.
period, and that's the key. And then you had a couple offensive rebounds. They're at the end of the third quarter. That tip in by New Orleans, I forget who it was. All of a sudden, you see the switch. They got the momentum going toward them.
It's crazy to think that Zion Williamson has yet to have a triple-double, and that was his first career triple-double.
He's been hurt forever.
2 minutes.
I know, but he's been in there quite a bit. He's awesome.
He's phenomenal.
He's got a little Barkley in him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would agree with that.
I love watching him play. I really do. And, it's just unfortunate that this team is really struggling.
And nobody's going to get in front of that kid and take a charge. Or
Plumlee, maybe. Who could do it?
Somebody. And, Bobo's not. KD's not. Devin Booker. Nobody. He comes down the lane a couple times. By the way, he's good with both hands. I mean, he's that one a reverse layup, the one dunk, the slam that he had. But that's the best, what little we see of Zion Williamson. That's the best I've seen him play in, he's been in the league, 4 years now, hurt 3 of them. But he looked rejuvenated, renewed, and he wants to finish strong. I think he wants to kind of set the tone for himself next year.
I like Trey Murphy, too. He's a good player, too.
He couldn't miss.
Yeah.
He couldn't miss.
It's a nice a punch there, 1-2 punch with Williamson and Murphy.
How far was he shooting those threes?
About 1 minute.
From about the dang near between the free throw line and the half court line. Phenomenal how far he was shooting those threes.
They're going to be a good team. I think Pelicans can be a good team. They're missing a player or two, but I think that they're going to be going.
But they got to get
everybody healthy.
Court, yeah, they're pretty decent core nucleus. Hey, remember just a couple years ago they were in the playoffs, but with the injuries with Zion and some of the moves that they had, they've struggled. But
30 seconds.
We would never thought the Suns would be the team, the Pelicans would be the team you go get healthy with. Not the other way around for the Pelicans to get healthy playing the Suns.
Say some news that hit today. Our mothership, 98.7 Arizona Sports. Ron Wolfley, of course, the longtime color analyst for the Arizona Cardinals. Also my former radio partner before Manuch 20 plus years ago, is stepping down as the color analyst for the Arizona Cardinals. He'll still be
Good
on the
toss.
radio, of course, which is great. I'm bummed to hear that.
Me too.
He is. I'm biased, but he is one of my favorite color analysts in the sport because he knows the game inside and out. Played at a very high level, and I think he's extremely educated. I know some people don't like the voice or whatever, but so what? That's nothing to do with it. It's the content, and I'm going to miss him. And it's going to be tough for the Cardinals to find a replacement. You know,
He's truly a color analyst with the little quips he throws in there.
He's so passionate too.
that's the thing
You
too.
can tell how much he
is
loves the Cardinals.
so passionate. I mean, you figure he was a Cardinal. He was a St. Louis Cardinal and a Phoenix Cardinal.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, just the fact that he lives and dies. You know, the
Passionate. It's a good
passion.
term.
I'll never forget when I was doing a show with him for all those years. I used to make fun of him because he had a Jeep, and the Jeep had a Dallas Cowboy license plate around it because of his wife at the time, or I don't remember who, but he'd be driving this Jeep.
Yeah.
This is before he was color analyst.
Yes.
And it said Dallas Cowboys. The license plate holder.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is the funniest thing. I'm like,
Wolf,
come on,
we're gonna
man.
miss you, buddy. We're gonna miss you, Wolf.
Like, we ain't going anywhere. He's right next to us.
We'll miss him on Sundays. That's what we're gonna miss.
All right, we're going to get into some picks. We'll find out what Scott thinks about a back-to-back with the Pelicans and the Suns. That's coming up as we continue from Wright Toyota. It's Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B right here on ESPN 620.
Hey, Arizona, it's Mike Wilbon. I've been around sports professionally and personally.
My bad, Jax.
You're good.
Yep.
You're good.
Forgot that one. Fuck.
good.
He threw me off with the late toss.
To stay hydrated. That's where Cocoa 5 comes.
If you want, I mean, I can always just give it to you right after this 30-second. It's up to you.
Yeah. We could do it either or.
Cool.
right
I'll
before
toss it to you
Scott,
right now.
whatever's easier.
We'll go before Scott. It'll just transition.
.org for a better us.
It's now time for your Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B's bottom of the hour ESPN 620 Sports Update from Wright Toyota. I'm Jackson Groff. For those eagerly anticipating Arizona State Sun Devils running back Cam Scottabue's 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, don't hold your breath. Scottaboo announced earlier today that he will be skipping nearly all the drills this week opting to participate in only the vertical and broad jumps. He plans to complete a full workout at Arizona State's Pro Day instead. For Arizona Wildcats wide receiver Tyrone McMillan, he will not take part in any combine drills this week. His plans for Arizona's Pro Day are uncertain, but alongside Scatterbo plans to attend Big 12 Pro Day in March. There are multiple ways to listen to us: ESPN 620 AM on FM at 98.7 HD2 and always streaming live on ArizonaSports.com. Plus, check out our show pages on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Just search Roc and Manuch. Now it's time for Scott Spreitzer.
Now, sports gamblers, Scott Spreitzer, one of the leaders and most trusted names in the country. Nobody watches and studies games more than he does. From TalkSports.com, here's Scott Spreitzer, exclusively on with Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B on ESPN 620.
All right, Scott joins us now on the Right Toyota guest line. You can always follow him on Twitter X at Scott Wins. Scott, we are just a couple weeks from the madness of March, and how much preparation goes in this time of year for you to anticipate, the handicapping for the tournament?
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a different handicap as we get into March. I mean, you've got teams that are set pretty much in where they're going to be when it comes to the Sunday selection show and the seedings and all that kind of stuff. And when they get into their tournaments, they're laying a lot of points when they face the bad teams in the opening round, and those bad teams might be playing their final game if they lose. So you kind of look to, play big underdogs a little bit more in conference tournaments than you would during the course of the regular season. So I'm looking at stuff like that. I really like to look at offensive and defensive adjusted efficiencies going into the postseason from these teams. I mean, there's some teams that are just terrible at both ends, when it comes to mid-range jumper, maybe attacking the rim, and you can get nice matchups that can exploit those deficiencies when you get into March. So just a few different things than you look at during the course of the regular season.
Let's talk some college basketball. A big game, UCLA at Purdue. Last week, we discussed a little bit about, Indiana and Purdue, and that game did not go, I think, as a lot of handicappers thought, as Purdue lost bad in that one, I think, by 15. What, when you look at UCLA at Purdue right now, a Purdue team that's lost now 4 straight, and a UCLA team that's kind of going in the other direction, they're actually, they're playing pretty good right now.
Yeah, that Purdue game I was at a UNLV baseball game, and I'm looking at scores, and I see Purdue 37-25 at the half at Indiana. They got outscored 28-3 to start the second half. And, they're just not quite as deep as what they were the last few editions that we've seen out of Purdue. So, and they got a point guard who's playing a lot of minutes, but they've been off since that game, since Sunday. So they've had a chance to get their legs back under them. I look at UCLA, they've won just one of their first 5 games on the road against the so-called traditional Big Ten teams, and the losses came by 9 points per game. So they've allowed 51% 2-point shooting on the season, which is not too hot. It goes all the way up to 56% allowed in those 4 road losses against those, traditional Big Ten teams. I look at the flip side, Purdue 3-0 straight up and against the spread against the new Big Ten teams, those teams that were absorbed from the Pac-12, and they won those games by 12 points per game. There's 4 Pac-12 teams now in the Big Ten. Only Oregon at 4-3 has a winning road record against their new conference opponents. And again, breaking down Purdue, 11th best offense when it comes to adjusted efficiency. Obviously, there's no real excuse for giving up a 28-3 run when you're dominating at halftime. I expect a focused effort. I think they'll be, they'll have their legs back under them after being off for basically 5 days. And I looked at Matt Painter's record when he's coming off a double-digit loss. They're 22-6, and they win by 13 points per game at home. So it's, getting a little bit high there at 6, but I think Purdue still gets the win and cover.
It's got a big game in the Big 12. Arizona traveling to Ames to take on Iowa State. Number 22 versus number 9 Iowa State. I haven't seen any lines per se, but where do you think this one falls? U of A has lost 3 out of the last 5. Iowa State playing pretty decent basketball overall, but where do you see this game falling?
Yeah, 2 books so far have jumped out with an opening line here, and they have Iowa State at 4.5. Arizona, you remember, connected on that 70-footer at the buzzer to send that game in Tucson to overtime. And then Iowa State looked like they had their souls ripped out of their bodies after that shot. They were gassed in overtime. Arizona won by 11. Curtis Jones is back. He had a bad night that night against Arizona. And again, they were a 70-footer being made from winning that game. So Iowa State played without leading scorers Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert in that loss to Houston. Jones came back for Oklahoma State the other night. Gilbert remained sidelined. But I was reading last night and this morning, and their head coach, T.J. Otzelberger, said that Gilbert practiced on Thursday. He believes he's going to play Saturday. So you get Gilbert back. You got Curtis Jones back for a second game, and this team is a different team when those two are on the court. What they got to do is contain Caleb Love a little bit. He's been on fire of late. But I think the Cyclones at 4.5 all the way up to about 5.5 are a bet here as long as those two players, Jones and Gilbert, are on the floor. And U of A can't shoot threes. Iowa State's a strong defender of the two-pointer. They don't give up those mid-range jumpers. So if U of A can't make a couple of threes, Iowa State might be able to do what they do best on defense. I think the Cyclones end up winning this game and covering that 4.5-point spread.
Scott, how hard is it to set a line or look at it when you got a guy like Caleb Love, as you mentioned, that's been so hot and cold? Now, he's played pretty decent, but you just never know. He might hoist 25 threes and make 3. How much of that is incorporated when you look at a guy like this?
That's, what I do when I see something like a guy who might be taking a ton of shots like that. He can be, as you mentioned, he could be 8 for 20 one night, shoot pretty well, and he could be 3 for 20 the next night. I just tend to look at how the opponent does against the three-pointer, against the deep perimeter shots. And that's a situation where, the Cyclones have been really good against twos. They push guys out against where they shoot threes, and they play a pretty good brand of defense, especially at Hilton Coliseum. So I tend to do that. I look and see, okay, do I have a consistent result night in, night out from the opponent as far as their deep perimeter defense is concerned? And with the Cyclones, you definitely do when they're healthy.
All right, how about Cincinnati, Houston? You liking this one?
3 minutes.
Yeah, Houston laying 15.5 right now, guys. A couple of books that have opened this up. And since he's on the road against a team that looks like men against boys, most nights on the court, and since he could be missing their second leading scorer in this game, they're really balanced. They don't have a bust-out score. Like their top score is like 13.5 points per game, and then Lukosius, who's questionable for this contest, comes in at about 11 or 12 a game. It's going to be played at a snail's pace. Both teams play a really slow tempo. Since he's really good at defending attacks at the rim, that's not really Houston's game, though, so their strength is kind of negated a bit here as far as the Bearcats. Neither team gets to the free throw line. That scares me about Houston. Maybe they're undoing in late March, but they're 2-5 against the spread, and their last 7 as a double-digit favorite. And Houston's last 8 games have been decided by an average margin of 8 points per game. So, listen, I don't think since he's going to win this game at 15.5 is an awful lot of points to cover for a team that's been involved in a lot of games that end up in that 8 to 10 point margin.
All right, Scott, I'm going to go off the script here a little bit. Number 6, Bama, taking on number 5, Tennessee. Has Alabama righted the wrongs they had against Auburn? What was it, about a week and a half ago? How do you see this game coming down?
Yeah, they sure look like they righted the wrong against Miss State with a nice 38-point win the other night. As far as this game, I don't see an opening line yet, guys. They're probably going to be about a 4-point underdog, Alabama, in this one. And I know Bama gives up a ton of points. We all know that. But the thing is, it's because of their pace. This team is the number 1 tempo in all of college basketball out of 364 teams. They're actually 18th defending the 3. They're 31st in effective defensive field goal percentage. So it's not like a situation where, they're just playing bad defense, other than the clunker against Missouri. And I thought that was a leftover result from
about a minute or so.
Auburn at home the game before. But they've righted the ship. They beat Kentucky by 13. They beat Miss State by 38. As far as Tennessee, they're going to try to junk this game up. I think they'll be able to do enough. If you can lay 4 or less, I kind of lean towards Tennessee here because they're going to play at a Hank Iba pace, guys. That's what they do. And if they can throw that garbage out there as far as slowing down the pace, they can potentially beat Alabama in this one.
All right, Scott, last game. Let's go to the NBA in our own backyard. The Pelicans and the Suns. Suns are 2-10 on the season on back-to-back games. The spread has jumped. It's gone up from, 6.5 now? I believe 9.5.
9.5.
Where's it at now from your end?
Yeah, sitting at 9.5. It got up to as high as 10. And the reports are that Zion Williamson is going to sit out as he tends to do in the second of back-to-back nights, but they're also expected to sit C.J. McCollum for rest tonight. So you've got Olenek and Brown who are going to likely play in this game from what they're saying, but a total of 7 Pelicans are out in this contest. So the ticket prices, if the NBA was cool, would actually drop without Zion out there and C.J. McCollum, but that won't happen. So anyway, having said that, a little look into my handicapping, whether it's college basketball, NHL, or in this case, the NBA. When I have a team struggling like Phoenix is, and they're a significant favorite over a team that's been winning games of late, I tend to look to play that team that's laying the points, the struggling team. The problem is, in this particular matchup, is that they're 20-39 against the spread, the Suns. 2-10 straight up, 3-9 against the spread their last 12 games. And that's tough for me to jump in on. So what I do like, the bet that I made this morning, was Devin Booker over 26.5 points. He scored 28 or more in each of his last 4. He had 36 last night. And
clear.
Teams are worse than New Orleans on the defensive end. So if folks are looking to jump on that, I would say the cutoff, 27.5 points. Anything 27.5 or below that, I like Devin Booker to go over.
I'm all over it. Scott, thank you, my friend. Have a great weekend.
Good luck, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Scott Spreitzer. Scott wins on X, part of DocSports.com. It's not just basketball. He's got everything up on the website, DocSports.com, and he's brought to you by our Fan Pick'em, which is powered by the 5 Twin Peaks locations. The madness is almost here. I think a 17th straight year of doing the Pick'em, and this year we're mixing it up a little bit. I think you're going to really like how we're doing it, but you'll have more on that. Everything's kind of already up on our website at Roc and Manuch. But up next, we'll have yes.
Hey there, guys. I know we were a little busy there. We were about to go into a break, but I thought I'd get some of our listeners involved as we had a home run in the Diamondbacks versus Kansas City Royals game. Looked like it was Gino Grover homering out to left field.
Gino Grover. Who the heck's Gino Grover?
Yeah, was he number 87? What number was he? I mean, you sure it's the D-backs? I'm just kidding.
That's what it says here.
All right, 602-230-0620, and you'll get yourself a gift card from Wetzel's Pretzels. So whenever you hear a home run during a D-backs broadcast, not here the broadcast itself, but during the game, during spring training, we'll give you an opportunity to win some free food. How about that? We'll have our locks of the week next. It's Roc and Manuch, Jimmy B from Right Toyota.
similars.
It's time for the guys to give you their locks of the weekend. Whether it's on the football field, basketball court, or even the baseball diamond, Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B give their locks of the weekend to help put some money in your pockets. Now, the locks.
All right, locks brought to you today by Upper Crust Pizza and Wine Bar in Phoenix. It's your Ohio State Alumni Club of Phoenix bar, and it's located right there at the 101 in Cave Creek next to Costco. All right, Jax, how'd we do last week?
Ouch. Yeah. Not good.
We got to reevaluate. 0-4 as a group.
Wow.
Rock is in the lead 13-9-1. He had the Spurs -5.5 over the Pistons. Did not hit. Manuch 9-14 had the Bucks to win and cover -5.5. I think the Wizards won outright that game.
How's that happen?
I had the Wisconsin Badgers.
I agree, because that's a game I was going to pick, and I saw you did. I'm like, how are they going to lose to the Bucks?
Freaking Wizards.
I mean, excuse me, how are the Wizards going to lose?
I'm 12-11. I had Wisconsin -7.5 versus Oregon. It looked great until 5 minutes left in the game, and Wisconsin actually lost the game in overtime, so I lost that. And then Connor, 3-4, had Marquette money line versus Villanova. I think Villanova won by 20, and Marquette was favored by 7.
Is it that time of year, NBA, college, you're seeing these upsets? For sure, locks,
That's
right?
March 1st tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah, we need to get to that. We're not doing well. All right, let's get to this week's locks. Now that the Pelicans spread is now 10. Suns are getting 10 because Zion's not going to go. And who did he say? McCollum's not going.
Yeah,
so my lock now is the 10, and I'm going to take the Suns. I was all over the Pelicans because they're 2-10, but 10 points is a lot. Their two best players, arguably, well, two of the three best players are not playing. Don't be surprised if Booker or Durant maybe have a little load management.
They can't afford to load manage. Not anymore. They got 23 games.
If New Orleans,
because they got to win. They got to win the game. They got to make sure that they might sit the fourth quarter if they're blowing them out, but they can't afford. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Rock. I've got the Suns, my lock. What is it, -10 now over the Pelicans, even though it's gone from 6.5 to 9.5 to 10. So it looks, to your point, looks like the Pelicans are resting everybody. What did Scott Sprecher say? 7 guys will not be playing for the Pelicans tonight. So the Suns should beat a proverbial G League team, that being the Pelicans, tonight's game, -10. I'm going to take that lock and win outright.
I'm going to go to the SEC. Auburn travels to Kentucky tomorrow, 4.5-point spread. I like Auburn -4.5. This team, 26-2. I'm looking at their last couple games. They haven't had a close game within maybe 2 or 3 points all the way back in at Georgia early in the season, early January. They just dominated everyone. They beat Ole Miss last week by 30. This team is the best team in college basketball, them alongside Duke. Give me Auburn -5.5 at Kentucky. Connor?
I'm going to be rolling on back to the NBA. I'm going on down south to Miami, where the Indiana Pacers are taking on the Heat. I'm rolling Indiana -4. I think that they're going to be able to get it done against Miami. Miles Turner and Bam Adebayo are going to have a fun matchup down low. But I think you talk about Tyrese Halliburton leading a really good charge for this Pacers team. They're a little slept on right now. I think going and getting Pascal Siakam was a huge get for them. I like them to win by 4 against Miami.
All right,
in Miami.
There's our locks. Good luck if you're going to follow us. After last week, I wouldn't do our locks. I just wouldn't.
Major hiccup.
All right, let's get to our football at 50. Football at 50, Matthew Stafford is going to stay a Ram. They're going to restructure his contract. Great news if you're a Rams fan. I did not like the fact that they were going to try to move him. I mean, there was a lot of talk that maybe Aaron Rodgers would come in to L.A. and there'd be a move with him, maybe going to Raiders or going to the Giants. That's not the case. And there were some options like, maybe Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or somebody along those lines would end up in L.A. Stafford's a good quarterback, a really good quarterback. Great on fantasy, too. I mean, twofold.
It's interesting because Sean McVay, I forget what podcast, I think it was on Tuesday, kind of tipped his hand and said, look, we want Matthew Stafford. We want him to stay with this team, but we got to look at the overall salary and where we're going to be in 2 or 3 years. It was kind of hinting. Now, I don't know if that was a shot across the bow at Matthew Stafford's people or him or whatever. So it's interesting how 2 or 3 days later, Stafford has agreed to restructure, which you go, well, he's still going to make probably $35 to $40 million. Leave some money on the table, keep some of the go out to some free agents, make sure that they're in the hunt next year again. So I think that this was pretty much a foregone conclusion. It was just a matter of him acquiescing to go ahead and restructure.
And then some reports that Aaron Rodgers could end up with the New York Giants. New York Giants, along with Russell Wilson, a possible name that could end up a New York Giant, football giant, as that's a team that I didn't see coming. I just didn't.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I mean, there were a lot of reports. I just didn't see the Giants being that team. I would think
he'd want to move.
I get that, but it's like, get out of New York.
Yeah.
But I mean, that media there is so tough, and I don't think he enjoyed that part of it.
Well, they're in his business 24/7, 365. I really believe the Giants, they might be saying that to kind of put people off because it's like Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward seem to be the leading candidates for the Giants as far as a first-round pick is concerned. But to say that Aaron Rodgers, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers still got skills, still got talent, just can't move as well as he used to. To a team to take him on as the starter, what are they going to put around him?
So
They don't have anything around him.
Let me ask you this. If you're a general manager and you want to play the game, you got the number 3 pick overall, that being the New York Giants, right?
Yep.
Do you wait to the draft before you make a deal with Aaron Rodgers? If Aaron's your guy, and you say, Aaron, we're taking you, but I want to get through the draft because we want Hunter. We want Hunter, and we want everybody to think we need a quarterback.
Yeah.
So there's that
game.
Yeah,
that gamesmanship. That could be because I don't see anybody picking up Aaron Rodgers prior to the draft. Now, during free agency, there might be some teams that might kick the tires with Aaron Rodgers. Remember, free agency starts in a week and a half, 2 weeks. By that time, I think a lot of the dust will settle in reference to who wants to keep Aaron Rodgers, who wants to go after Aaron Rodgers, and who's not. But yeah, I think a lot of teams will go ahead and draft, make their drafts, and go, okay, now, do we need a quarterback? Did we get our guy? If we didn't get our guy, would Aaron Rodgers be that particular individual? I can't see the Giants not getting one of these two quarterbacks to move this franchise forward. They don't have anybody really to move this franchise or build around. So I think either Sanders or Ward will be their guy.
By the way, our president had to comment on the tush push today, if he would ban it or not, and sure enough, he said he wouldn't ban it. So, good job. Good. You're a football fan.
Learn how to stop it before you ban something like that. I loved it when Sirianni that next day our count, our cadence, getting everybody coordinated. We're having all this success, and now you want to stop us from this? And he kind of stopped himself from saying, well, why don't you just learn how to stop it, and then you can look to ban it. So I thought Sirianni coming back and saying, there's a lot more work than it is. Get yourself learn how to stop it and work it from there.
I think it's funny, though. I mean, aren't there other things going on in the world
where
a reporter has to, in the White House, say, hey, excuse me, Mr. President, what do you think about the possible ban of the tush push in the National Football League?
Well, he might have wanted to
from the Spectator.
He might have wanted to lighten up the mood a little bit with Zelensky being there and all the other folks there. Just say, throw a little brevity. Hey, how about the tush push? Let's lighten this thing up a little bit.
You think that stuff staged? A question like that?
Minute and a half.
What do you mean, Steve? With that there like that?
No, you think that question is staged? That is planted?
Oh,
somebody's saying, hey, to lighten the mood.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you ask the president about the tush push?
Might have been. All seems pretty orchestrated to me.
We'll see if the NFL listens to him.
Yeah, true.
I hope they don't ban it. I mean, Sirianni has come out and he's kind of upset about it.
Yeah,
they work hard on that, and it's worked. Just because no one can't stop it shouldn't mean that they got to get rid of it.
Absolutely. Learn how to stop it before you try to ban a play. You want to ban a play? Somebody throws 7 touchdown passes on, you're going to ban the deep ball beyond 45 yards? If you're having success, hey, yeah, those guys are having success all game.
Here's a quote from Sirianni real quick. I almost feel a little insulted because we worked so hard at that play. The amount of things that we've looked into how to coach that play, the fundamentals. There's 1,000 plays out there, but it comes down to how you teach the fundamentals and how the players go through the fundamentals. The fact that it's a successful play for the Eagles and people wanted to take it away, I think it's a little unfair.
Amen.
Yes. How about that? Mark May is coming up. Yogi Roth as well. The 3 o'clock hour of Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B is coming up. By the way, check out our new website, rocandmanuch.com. All of our social media is up there, and what we're doing for the Madness of March. We got a couple big promotions that you'll want to see, and everything's up on the website, rockandmanuch.com.
It's Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B, now on ESPN 620, 98.7 FM HD2, and streaming live at arizonasports.com. The guys are powered by the law offices of Lerner and Rowe. In a wreck and need a check? Make one call, that's all. 602-977-1900. And now on your ESPN station in Phoenix, ESPN 620, Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B.
Hour number 3 of Roc and Manuch and Jimmy B out here at Wright Toyota, 78th Street and Franklin Drive Boulevard. I'm Dan Manucci alongside Jax. We got Connor back in the studio. Roc had to step out just for a couple minutes. Talk a lot about the Phoenix Suns. I would think they would probably win tonight. Would we check, Jax? Last time we looked, the spread was -10 because it looks like Zion Williamson's going to be out. McCollum's going to be out. Several other individuals out. So the spread went from 6.5 to -10. So interesting. My first thought wasn't talking to Scott Spreitzer that last hour is like, wow, why is this jumped? He had the information about the players sitting out. I might have thought that maybe somebody saw him in downtown Scottsdale partying hardy after the big win against the Phoenix Suns last night, but that's not it. It's jumping because Looks like there's going to be several players out, but Zion and McCollum are both going to be out for this game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, they should win this game. I mean, I don't really have any other comments besides that. This team's a disappointment, and it's frustrating, I'm sure, for you as a Suns fan, but you having to talk on the radio 5 days a week about this team. It's about the same thing over and over again. It's at some point, how much further until you just don't even talk about the Phoenix Suns? You got 23 games left, and it's the same issues.
Yeah, it seems to be the when you look at the Suns team now, they've lost 7 out of the last 8, 11 of the last 14. Again, giving up an average of 123 points per game. Now sitting 3.5 games behind Sacramento for the play-in spot. That's right, the play-in spot. Looks like Bill was out. Don't know if he's going to be in tonight with the calf injury. You looked at the offensive rebounds. They gave up 16. They had some 10 turnovers. They had 6 in that fourth quarter. Book had 4 of them. And again tonight. But the talk today seems to be that senior NBA insider Chris Haynes has talked about a meeting between Booker and Budenholzer that talked about Book talking maybe a little bit too much. Here's Chris Haynes talking about this, NBA insider.
I was told that weeks ago, Mike Budenholzer called his star guard Devin Booker into his office to issue a complaint. That complaint, I'm told, was that Booker was being too vocal on the court and during timeout huddles. He implored his star guard to tone it down to allow for the coach's voice to be heard. This completely shocked Booker, I was told.
So you hear that, and I could see where Mike Budenholzer say, hey, look, hey, Book, can you just let me call the plays? Let me set everything up in the huddle. And then if he's also being loud out there, Booker, giving directions and giving instruction on the court, and he's, Book and Budenholzer's not getting his word across while they're on the court, I can see where that complaint could come from. But if Booker's trying to lead and direct traffic on the court, then that's a whole different realm. Now, being quiet, let me get my point across in the huddle, and let me just make sure that gets, and then you can talk to guys. So the more I hear that from Chris Haynes, and the more I go, I think I have a good understanding what Budenholzer is saying. I don't think Budenholzer is saying, well, don't be a leader out there on the court, but if I've got some instructions, let me get that out versus you talking over me. Rock, that's the only thing I can think of to try to put some brevity to what this is all about. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
No, we've already beat this up pretty hard today. I question how this information gets out. Is it legit? And I hope it's not, but when teams are struggling like this team, things like this come out, and some of it's embellished, some of it's true, some of it's not. But when there's smoke, there's fire too. So it's kind of like you're sitting back and you are, what's the next thing going to come out? What are we going to hear from somebody else? And why isn't somebody with the Suns ahead of this? Because if this continues to be a story, it's going to make this team look terrible.
Somewhere in the middle lies, right? Somewhere, if Booker wants to be more vocal, it seems like he's putting some things out there. They want to be more vocal or talking about leadership and communication or lack of communication. Then what's that lack of communication? Is it on the court? Is it in the locker room? Where exactly is that communication? So when you think about that, you think of what Devin Booker is talking about. Carl, let's go to that next clip about Devin Booker talking about things should be handled differently as a leader sooner rather than later.
When you're talking about drawing the line and should have been done a long time ago, is that something that you're sitting here now thinking about yourself and like, I should have handled things differently, I should have done something?
Yeah, I always look at myself first. But I also talk a lot.
Should he have said something sooner? I look at myself, I talk a lot, meaning,
yeah, but
maybe the complaint's legit.
That sound bites is not fair. There's more to it. I mean, we need to let him finish after he said talk, because he gets into where he's talking on the court and things like that. That puts it in perspective. That has more meaning than just hearing a clip like that.
Well, but I think
that's what people just like headlines, right? You just hear a headline, see a headline, and that's it.
And
you got to play the whole thing.
And he says, I do talk a lot, so maybe there's some truth with the report that Chris Haynes is saying. That he does talk a lot. Maybe he understands at certain times he needs to maybe tone it down to get some communication from the coaches out to him, and then speak when that time is right to speak. But I just appreciate if he's finally somebody stepping up to lead this team in that locker room or on the court is what is needed. I mean, he also talked about how sometimes, when things get tough, their communication stops. Things get quiet. And when things get tough, you should be talking all the time. Switch. Yeah. Or I got him, or I've got this or that. That was interesting to hear that things get quiet versus somebody stepping up and speaking up. I think those are some of the things. He also goes on to say, let's play this one here, Connor. Booker communication problems from top to bottom of the team. This is interesting.
I mean, everybody has to be on the same page. You can starts with the leaders of the team, obviously me, Brad, and Kay, and coach. But from my history, there's 15, 20 guys on the sideline that know the game plan, that know what's going on, and in the huddles, just constant communication.
Why is there communication problems? When you just talked about, you've got guys that 14 to 15-year guys, are experienced guys, except for your rookies, with Dunn. Why is there?
Because they're losing, Manuch. This is what happens. Everybody's like shocked. Why is this happening? Because they're losing.
No, I understand. I get that. There's a reason why. If communicate, okay, are you not coming across on defense? Are you not helping out here? Are you not helping out there? Booker he also talked about in reference to why isn't the help coming from here? He said he said another clip I heard a little bit earlier, we clearly do it in practice. Why we can't do it in a game is beyond me when it's all communicated in practice and it's not being translated in the game. My question is, well, why isn't it being translated in the game? Is guys getting lazy? They losing focus? I mean, you can't, if you fall apart in the fourth quarter. Hell, Rock, we saw this last year too. When Frank was coaching his team, you saw that the fourth quarter, the turnovers, the same exact thing.
Well, yes and no. I mean, what we've talked about most of this year is the third quarter. We've talked more about the third quarter than we have the fourth quarter. We've seen, some games where they've played really tough in the fourth quarter, and some other guys have stepped up. But hey, 19 wins in 50 games. I mean, that's where they're at. Let's just look at this team and say they're a below average basketball team. Plain and simple. And Durant and Booker most likely are on their way out. And maybe Booker talking like he is right now, and maybe someone called Chris Haynes to plant this on purpose because Book wants out. Book may be saying, there's people in Book's ear probably saying, hey, maybe the grass is greener somewhere else. You guys had a great run here in Phoenix. Maybe it is time to go somewhere else.
Well, and
I hate that, but hey, if you're him, he can play anywhere.
Well, there's already reports coming out saying that Kevin Durant will be the busiest trade.
Well, that's a given. We already know Durant's out. Booker's the bigger story.
Well, exactly. So
we all know that. It's Booker we need to be talking about. He's 28 years old.
If I think that Matt Ishbia is not going to throw the baby out in the bathwater. He's not.
How do you know? He has no experience.
Okay.
This is 1 year.
So
look at the two bad trades he's already made.
I get
his track record is not that great right now. But the Durant deal was horrible. The Brandon Beal was even worse.
Yeah.
He mortgaged his future, and now he's chasing to try to get it back together.
If
he may have to move Book to save this.
Well, and that's the thing. Would he have the guts and courage to do that? I'd have no problem.
I don't think he'd have any trouble.
But
he's a hell of a businessman.
Bradley Beal is the guy that can't go anywhere unless he agrees to it. He's not going anywhere.
Or you
unless
pay
he
him,
agrees
and
to
you write it off,
or whatever.
Let him sit on his ass.
And
unless you want to play, I'm trading you.
And he may sit again tonight too with this calf injury. We don't know. He's questionable
of course,
for
it's
tonight.
a calf injury.
But it's interesting that if you're getting rid of Book, then you're in a total rebuild mode. Could you imagine if you had to keep Bradley Beal over Devin Booker, and you trade Book and you trade Durant, you go get assets, you go get first-round picks, legitimate first-round picks, you get a body or two, and you just suck it up for the next 2 or 3 years till you rebuild?
They're in a tailspin. It is what it is. They have the highest paid roster in the association.
Isn't that amazing?
And they're this bad.
Yeah.
This bad. And you want to go back to what, October, November, whenever the season started? They were 8-1 to start,
9-2,
and we were all like
9-2,
excited about what's wrong. Why can't be 8-1? Why is it gonna be 9-2?
Well,
I mean, 8-1 sounds better than 9-2.
Well, it's 9.
Doesn't it? Does 8-1 sound better than 9-2?
It sounds great, Rock. It sounds good.
But why'd you have to trump me on that?
Well,
why can't you just say, Rock? Yeah, 9-1. Why'd you have to go 9-2?
Well, I was just trying to be factual. That's all.
8-1's not factual.
Yeah,
Well,
I was 9-2 more factual than 8-1.
Well,
It's the same thing.
seriously, why do you got to? This is where you want to get more words in. Like you got to hit your word count on our show.
Well, I do.
You need to get more. People need to hear you. Like I was a little late today. All right, and you need to let Jax talk at all.
Well, I
you
did
did everything.
I let him chime in once.
God, Jax, I'm sorry, man. We're trying to give you reps. You would think of all the training he does with quarterbacks that he would, appreciate you and give you more reps on the air.
He had a lot of time to chime in. That's for
no,
sure.
he didn't.
Yeah,
I listened to the whole thing. The one segment I missed.
When I get a chance to quarterback and actually play, I'm throwing the damn ball, man. I'm getting it about down the field.
Oh, my goodness. Anyway, we will continue on with Mark May as we continue from Wright Toyota. It's Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B. Well, not today, here on ESPN 620.
Football is two-time Super Bowl champion, a member of the famed Washington Redskins Hogs offensive line, 1981 first-round pick, earned All-American honors at Pitt, and a member of the College Football Hall of Fame, football analyst and commentator Mark May, now on ESPN 620.
Try Mark May joins us here on the right show to guest line Roc and Manuch, Jimmy B. I bet Mark May never avoid.
All right, guys, I'll be right back.
At the combine, he was probably there looking for more drills to do after they shut the lights off there. How about you, Mark May? You ever miss any drills on purpose or say, nah, you got enough tape. You've seen enough. I'm good.
Back in the day, we didn't even have a combine. I went to Seattle and I went to Dallas where there were about 12 teams at each place. They basically gave you a couple of tests and talked to you and interviewed you. And that was about it. Well, back in the day, they came to Pitt and we had a Pitt workout day because we had so many players that were going to be drafted. We had I think 13 players get drafted and another 7 or 8 played in the USFL. So they came to Pitt and worked us out at Pitt. The only thing I remember is there was a coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, an offensive line coach. His name was Dan Radikowski. They used to call him Bad Rad. And he was one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. He came up and he worked out Russ Grimm and myself for like 2 hours, 15 minutes, like doing drills around cone drills in the locker room because it was raining outside, doing all these drills in the locker room. Then afterwards, he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, that was a great workout, Mark, but we're not going to draft." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Oh, you're going to be gone by the time we draft." You son of a gun. It was like, I've never been so ticked off at a coach in my life. I mean, he worked us like dogs. I mean, it was like a big time, long time. It was like a practice workout. And then at the end of it, he said, "Oh, we're not going to draft. You're going to be gone by the time we draft." It was like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I think the name of that group, because they went around in my rookie year in '79, it was the Bledsoe group that represented Dallas, Seattle, like 5, 6, 7 teams. But the one thing about that, Mark, is they wanted me to go play baseball that spring after my senior in football. And then they said, "You have a chance to get drafted as well." But I went, well, wait a second. Scouts, coaches, GMs, to your point, offensive court, they're going to be around. So if they're going to call you on a Monday morning at 10 and say, hey, Mark, we're going to be there at 4:30 to work you and the 5 or 6 other guys out. You had to be available, and you showed up. You didn't tell them, "Hey, look, you got enough tape. I'm moving on. I'll just wait for the draft."
That never happened. Not even with Hugh Green or anybody like that. Randy McMillan, Hugh Green, myself were all drafted in the first round. I couldn't fathom anybody doing that because at the time you wanted to get drafted. It wasn't like the luxury of like, "Yes, I'll give you some of my time to meet with you." It was like, "No, be there at 4:00," and you were there at 3:30 because you wanted to impress them. Particularly if they were the teams that were in the top 10 or top 12, because at that time you didn't know where you were going to be drafted. That was basically when Mel Kiper first formed, when his father first formed the draft and the pre-draft stuff. And that was in, the early 1980s, 1980, 1981. So that was the beginning of the draft process where it was on radio. Then it got to be on ESPN and on TV years later. So at that time, you had to be there because basically the way of communication was you got a telephone call on your landline phone line, boys and girls. Way back then, the rotary phones, you got a call and it said to be here at this time, and that was it. It wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't, "Well, I'll text you back later." No, you had to have your butt there if you wanted to get drafted.
Mark, the NFL Combine started yesterday. Defensive linemen and linebackers. I know the Arizona Cardinals are one of many teams that looked at that group closely, very deep class. Any guys stick out to you either yesterday or when you take a look at the defensive line class as a whole that you think the Cardinals should keen an eye on and select at 16?
Well, it all depends who's going to be available. If Abdul Carter's available, it all depends how his foot is. They say he's not going to have an operation, so now he's got to probably be the most scrutinized player in the draft because guess what? He may be the number one pick as a defensive end or rush end. He has a foot problem. So do you go in and you have your medical staff go in? Because every team that's in the top 20 are probably going to go in and have their medical staff at Penn State checking out that foot to make sure that he's all right, that he's 100% to go. Because you don't want to use your draft capital that early in the draft and have a player not be available to you that year, as the Cardinals did last year. Their first-round draft pick wasn't available to them last year, and he was basically on the bench most of the year. So you've got to make sure that player's healthy first, and you've got to go out there. I look at Tennessee. Tennessee's got a handful of linemen. Ole Miss has a handful of linemen that are going to get drafted probably in the first round or close to the top. Those are the guys that may fall to where the Cardinals pick. That's where they should be looking and spending most of their time and their draft capital time. But if they're dumb enough to go after somebody that's going to be drafted in the top 10, which they know they're not going to get unless they move up in the draft, that's just a waste of time and a waste of draft capital.
Do you trade it and get more picks, or do you think that priority is that defensive tackle if that top-notch tackle's there?
Well, it all depends what happens in free agency. It all depends who falls in free agency because you don't really know right now until free agency opens up and who you can sign and who you won't sign because you're not going to get the pick of the litter in free agency unless somebody's at the end of their career. We all know that. You're not going to come here because most players in the prime of their career, one, they want to get the bag, but most importantly, they want a chance to get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. So that's their first priorities. So that knocks the Cardinals out of the picture right away. If you're at your end of your career, like a J.J. Watt, and you're only going to spend another couple of years in the league, you go get the money at the end of your career and you'll sign with a team like the Cardinals, and hopefully you'll be productive for them.
Last thing before we move on to the SEC and the Big Ten and the playoffs, just your thoughts on the report cards that came out on all the teams and how the conditions were there in Washington. So
this is going to go with him, right?
How much? Yeah, I know it is. How much does it affect that in the locker room? And they talked about family members not getting passes on the sideline. I know I gave you a little love the other day. Are you still in the hunt for a pass anywhere in there?
Yeah, maybe I can get one, but I'll probably get one for the Commanders or for the Chargers much before I'll get one for this team, the Cardinals, where I live in Arizona. So that's not going to happen with Fredo as long as he's still at the helm. But this is a team that we all know. Everybody knew it. Like I said before, players talk. You know,
Yes,
if you're in a bad situation, if you got drafted by the Cardinals and it's a crappy facility, it's a crappy weight room, you don't like the training staff, the owner's a jerk, why would you go out there and promote this team? You may do it publicly, but privately when you talk to your friends in the league, you're going to dog this team. You're going to say, why in the world do you want to come here? You know, the weather's great, but besides that, there's nothing else to offer with this. Because look at guys, they go to the playoffs, they average what, once every decade? Go back and look at the last since they've been in Arizona. Basically, they go to the playoffs maybe once every decade. You know, you don't want to be part of that situation. You want to be part of a team. Kansas City, go there. San Francisco, go there. Go to the Rams, go there. Go to Philadelphia, go there. Teams that have an opportunity that you know that are probably going to have a shot at getting into the playoffs.
Mark, I want to ask you your opinion on the greedy SEC, Big Ten, as they're moving closer to football. Dictatorship is what you're seeing out there.
Big word.
In regards to guaranteeing them more spots, the most spots. How are you taking that?
Well, it's always the rich get richer, and you know it was going to come down to this. What it's going to come down to, guys, is they're going to keep pushing for the top 4 seeded teams because they know there's probably most likely 1 year there's going to be 2 from the SEC and 2 from the Big Ten, or there's going to be at least they're definitely going to get 1 from each conference, and regardless. So there's going to be a possibility of getting 2 in. So we know that's going to happen for the seeding for the top 4. They're going to push for that because it's all about the money. You know, no matter what happens, if you look at the whole picture, what NIL did is they exposed everything. And what Ohio State did this year is they bought a national championship. So if you look at their format, the way that they did it, that's the blueprint for the future until things change. So if you want to win in college football, you go out there and you buy the best of players that are available and get them on your roster for a year and go win a national championship and just forget about it after that. Because that's what it's going to come down to in the next few years. And that's what seeding is going to do. Because if you look at the money, when you're seeded that way, the more money you get. Each round you get more money. So basically, if you're sitting at home, you're getting a check. If you're seated and you get that first buy, you're still getting a check.
So what the Big Ten said is, well, we'll bring this up again. If it doesn't change, we'll bring it up again when we get the new TV contract with ESPN. So is ESPN going to, is this the tail wagging the dog? They're in bed with the ESPN and they'll dictate that eventually if nothing changes the next year or two?
Well, what happens is I think what the commissioners are finally figuring out now is they're going to be running the show in the future because it was always the television contracts that they had with ESPN or Fox or whatever, CBS. Right. They usually dictated to the conferences, or they dictated to them from top to bottom. It was like, this is what we're going to give you. If Fox doesn't match it or CBS doesn't match it, you're stuck with ESPN, ABC. That was the deal. Now they're going to go around with this playoff, the way that it's seeded around. They're going to sit there and say, you know what, we want more money for this because guess what? We're playing more games, and we feel that if we're playing more games and we get the home game in our stadium the first round after the bye, and then after that we win again. Guess what? This $4 or $5 or $6 million just isn't enough per team. We want $8 to $10 million. What's ESPN, ABC going to do, and what's CBS and Fox going to do after that? They're going to turn to Amazon, and then all of a sudden we're going to be watching on Paramount. We're going to pay for every playoff game. That's what's going to happen down the road. In 10 years, guys, if we're still around and we're alive, 10 years, I guarantee we're going to have it pay-per-view for these playoffs and the Super Bowl.
So if I understand, if you win the conference championships, no buys, if they don't have any buys, it won't make any difference. It'll just only help your ranking per se in reference to helping your seeding is what I see. With no buys involved. Is that how I understand that?
What they're arguing about now is just
Jax, can you hear me?
Important. They don't want the automatic bid for conferences. So if they see 2 from the Big 12 doesn't have enough power to turn that. You know, the future Pac-12, what are they going to be? They're not going to get in. So you're looking at this situation, and you're sitting there. If you're Georgia and Kirby Smart, and you're sitting there and you're watching Boise State at home watching you.
Yeah, they got a tackle that's pretty nice, too. And you got a good
It's time to go inside college football with elite analyst Yogi Roth. From Elite Eight coach to Emmy award-winning filmmaker and best-selling author, Yogi brings it all. Don't miss
Mike Sarho.
Y Option as he examines college football through the West Coast lens. Yogi Roth now on Roc and Manuch with Jimmy B right here on ESPN 620.
Hey, how are you? Good, great to hear your voice. I think it will. My gut is that the trend is going to grow towards more of an NFL style, like what Steve Sarkisian referenced on the Kay Adams show, kind of like OTAs. You know, I've talked to some coaches and athletic departments about that, of making spring a little bit longer. You know, right now there's a 34-day window to get 15 practices in, which, you know, some places that fit beautifully. Like I remember as a player, that was awesome. It was aggressive 5 weeks or whatever. You know, some try to mix it up and go pre-spring break, post-spring break, just from a health standpoint, and, you know, making sure guys don't go off and party for a week or whatever it might be. But I think now we'll see kind of like those 3-day weekends, and can you split them out so you can, especially for the quarter schools, appease the guys that are there. Like call it like at Oregon, it's a quarter school. You go in and maybe you do your first mini camp, if you want to call it that. And then that might just be for the new faces that showed up, you know, in January. And then you have an OTA for the whole team that's mandatory, right? And then maybe once you get into that next quarter academically, you bring the newcomers together. Like I think we'll see a lot of that moving forward. I mean, think about it right now. You've got these, they call them PRPs, which are player run practices. And they are basically practices, right? Like you're getting a script from your coordinator, you're running certain plays. Like I think we might as well just call it what it is, like it's a version of OTAs anyway. So I think we'll see that. I think we'll see, you know, increased elimination of a quote unquote culmination of spring. But I think the programs that especially aren't like the bluest of bloods, I don't think you want to lose a connection to fans coming out. You know, even if it's 8,000 or 28,000, I think there's something that I would, if I was one of those, call it programs 20 through 60 in major college football, let alone 20 through 100. You want to create something where your fans are meeting the players and getting to know the faces, take the helmets off, like do something for them. I think the TV helps. As a TV guy, like I think maybe you create more of a showcase like we've done in the past with the Pac-12 when I was there, versus only games, which are now the only things that you're really seeing on television. So I think it'll still evolve, but that's probably how it'll net out. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, live reps were, you know, like we never saw them in spring showcases or spring games anyway from a quarterback, like unless it was the younger guy. They were like, all right, we want to see what he could do. The dual threat guy, let's see what he could do as a young player. But the starter was always protected. I wonder if it becomes like, you can remember times when I think Herm Edwards had this rule where like there was no tackling, like in spring ball, even in fall, like they weren't taking guys to the ground. Like that's the NFL world. You're not even wearing pads in OTAs. I still believe it's a developmental sport at this age. I still think you do need to bang a little bit. I think that it's important to know what you have. And it's also important to navigate the calendar. So right now, like the portal's got a 10-day window. I think it's April 15th for, a little less than 2 weeks. I think we'll see teams try to navigate around that window for their team and their players, which I think is a smart thing to do. Live reps, it's a great question. It's why I think, we're looking at high school football, and I know you train a ton of guys in high school. I think the development in high school has never been better. I think the development in college has probably never been worse, because guys either have to play early or they're not going to play. So then you're just running what you can run to be efficient and hopefully successful. Or there's deciding that, they want to dip out, or you're getting a guy who's experienced, but he's only, he has 1 or 2 years left. So you've got to get them up to speed, which is why I think we're seeing in college football relationships become a premium, right? Kenny Dillingham was the poster in college football this year of making sure he got to know his team and a bunch of new faces, and he's so easy to connect with. That isn't the case everywhere, and it's hard when you still have these hours that are still being monitored by administrators within your respective school. It's like, all right, well, we can't necessarily just hang and get to know one another. We need to go to work and make sure you can align and line up and understand the system. So it'll be really fascinating to watch how this thing continues to shake out. Then you add in the roster element, and my gut tells me that I think teams are going to have smaller rosters than we anticipate and build it more like an NFL team to try to thrive in the revenue sharing model that we're about to enter.
About 3 minutes.
I don't know. I mean, obviously a lot of data has been run as well, right? So would it net out being that way anyway? Do we see let's just call it a traditional season, Ohio State, Michigan, call it now Oregon and Penn State not being in the playoff? It's hard to imagine that, right? Same thing with Georgia and Alabama and, pick 2 others. So I think history would probably prove that 3 or 4 of those teams from those leagues should be in. The thing that history hasn't proved, and I think that's the frustrating part, because I put my Pac-12 hat on, right? I call games to the Big Ten. So, I've lived that world for a year. And I also remember being in the Pac-12, and now that's kind of the Big 12, where you're just getting kind of, at times nudged to the side, or you could feel slighted in a way and not respected in a way. And, hey, let's go play the games. I get all that, totally, wholeheartedly. And I think that league in the Big 12 is still so new and so fresh that it's hard to say,
about a minute and a half.
I can't imagine a playoff without X. It's hard to be I can't imagine a playoff without Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, and BYU. That never happened, right? So it's hard to stomach that. So I think it's why we see this narrative going out and maybe the potential of that reality moving forward with the 2 leagues that are clearly driving the conversation. But I hope at the end of the day, it's just the best teams. I hope this drives equity in scheduling. I hope that we don't hear coaches talk about, well, I don't want to have a tough non-conference slate. Let's just get to the playoff. I want to just go see good football. That's why I kind of like the committee. Even though we'd all disagree with them at times, at the end of the day, the inequities in conference games, to me, would just kind of got brushed to the side a lot. When I would watch an SEC team play Mercer in week 11 and any other team play a challenging game in week 11 that is a 9-game conference slate, like the Big 12 and like the Big 10, I'm like, what are we talking about? So I hope those things get addressed before anything else. I'd love to see equity in major college football on the schedule, and then kind of we'll see how it shakes out. But it's an interesting time, and I'm just trying to have empathy to everybody involved, because I've sat in both sides, where I sit now calling games in the best conference in the country in the Big Ten, or having been in the Pac-12 where you felt slighted at times, and you just want to say, no, Utah can go hang with anybody, and you just try to me at least, kind of stay calm, state the facts, and see how this thing shakes out.
Good to wrap after.
Oh, he's amazing. I still can see him at the Elite 11 with that great hair that he's still sporting now, and I've always felt like he had a discernment to him and a presence to him that was unique. Was bummed to see him leave Oregon after leading them to a Pac-12 championship game appearance and a title in 2020. You looked and watched as he went to Texas Tech and then finished at Louisville. Just went on a journey that none of us, especially him, could have ever predicted. coming out of high school and going to the 11. I'm sure you've had many of those conversations with him. But I think he's proved the one thing that's true outside of got to be a competitor, got to be able to be a spot passer and hit certain areas. You can do those things, but really you have to be, to me, you have to prove you can navigate adversity. And he's had to do that on so many levels and so many different areas. He's going to be Andy Dalton to me. Like there's going to be a world where we look up and it's 12, 14 years later and he's made over $100 million playing. Maybe he's a starter for a run, maybe he's a backup for a run, but I just think the adversity he's navigated, he's going to have this presence, kind of like Dylan Gabriel. Like I think both of those guys are similar. Like they're going to go and just be tremendous additions to a franchise wherever they net out, and they'll end up winning games for somebody. Like they will. They might not be picked, as the first rounders, but I think both of those two will have a future that I think will be pretty bright in the NFL. You too, man. Always love talking to you.
Locator 1-800-677-1116.
It's the Lerner and Rowe one call, that's all call of the day. If you're looking for a full service law firm, just make one call.
Making Mike's up.
To 977-1900. Lerner and Rowe, voted Arizona's best law firm.
Sitting here eating my heart out, waiting for some lover to come. Number, baby, almost hang the phone off the wall. Looking for some
But we won it in 2018.
We kicked their butts, man. You know, that was like one of those anomalies. We beat them in what? We did what? Curling.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun to watch, them scraping the ice and
It is.
the touch, and it's very
Using the broom.
soothing.
It reminds me of Rock trying to clean his bedroom out. He's sweeping like crazy, trying to stop that stuff. Have you seen curling, right, Rock? You see they use the broom on the ice to manipulate the stone? That's what it's called, the stone. He's looking at me like...
I am too. Where did that come
Where
from?
the hell are you going?
Curling.
Yeah, but
we know what it is. What
Sweeping
do we do every day here? You don't think we know what curling is?
Yes,
And you've never even
do you
stepped
know it
foot.
was a stone?
You haven't even been in my zip code, and for you to say, you've been in my house,
I didn't
and
say
you
it
know
was in
I
your
have a Roomba. My
He does.
I do. I got
He
two.
does.
I just bought another one.
Wow.
I got two Roombas.
Roomba's live and well in Rock's household.
Wow.
But what had to
not
do with him
dirty.
sweeping his room? I mean, you're kind of a neat Nick, aren't you? You can't keep things picked up.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I would
It's
imagine.
just me and my dog. Yeah.
We just wondered where you were going with that, Jim. We had no idea, but that's okay.
Just trying to get some words in.
3 minutes. Two minutes. Minute and a half. One minute. $50. 30 seconds. Ten seconds. 5 seconds.